Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2. My name is Michael Wong, and I'm one of the co-hosts for the Gluten-Free Organic Thought podcast. For the first-time listeners, we appreciate you for tuning in into our podcast, whether you're watching us or just listening to us. So just quickly, just let everyone know that our goal of our podcast is actually to create a friendly platform for anyone to listen who wants to have a natural conversation about whatever, whenever. So we encourage our guests to share their thoughts, their feelings, so we can understand their perspective, their view. And eventually, we're going to start out, obviously, with our small group of friends and branch out to kind of learn and to gain more new perspective. Ultimately, this podcast for you guys, we want everyone to learn and grow from each other, and just also at the same time have fun with this. So with me right now, as always, Robert Din is our co-host. And for today's show, we're going to have Mr. Bryan Perez. So Robert, take it away.
Yeah, so how's it going, guys? It's Robert. Glad to be here for episode 2. First one we got cut off at the end, but hopefully I think I got a new computer, so everything should be working better now. So yeah, so let's start off. We'll start with our guest, Bryan. Just tell us a little about yourself and what you want people to know.
Cool, man. So, all right, my name is Bryan. I was born in New York 32 years ago to Colombian parents. I think that's a big part of my story, is that I'm part Colombian. Let me see. So when I was growing up, I was really into philosophy, consciousness, this
Music.
unseen force in the world. I was kind of a weird kid. I was kind of just this dazed out kid, always kind of daydreaming and looking at birds and looking at mountains and things like that. And as an adult, that kind of brought me into psychedelics, into the current modern hippie counterculture in the US. And now more recently, I feel like I graduated from that in a way to spirituality and shamanism.
Your next level up, pretty much.
Yeah, not to disparage anyone, but I think there's levels to it. So, recently I've been studying yoga, I've been studying Ayurveda, I've been studying a little bit of Jyotish, which is Vedic astrology. And these are all esoteric bodies of knowledge that we don't have as Americans. So I don't know why, but for some reason it called to me. So that's my passion. And then, defaults world-wise, I work as a software developer, and I'm starting my own Ayurvedic consultation.
There we go.
And I live in Colombia, in the countryside.
Oh, you're in Colombia now?
I'm in Colombia now, yeah.
You're in a farm, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. My family has an avocado farm. Avocados are big out here.
Avocado farm, nice.
It's the new coffee.
I love avocado, man. Send some over.
It's the new coffee, yeah. Colombian avocados, yeah.
So
that's a California life. It's everything avocado.
It's nuts because they're $3 for this tiny thing over there.
Yeah.
And here I have
25 cents probably.
Yeah, no, it's like that. I have trees. I have over 100 trees of avocados. You just get bucketfuls.
Do you guys sell that locally over there, or do you actually export it out somewhere else?
We used to sell it here locally, but now we're exporting it.
Obviously, probably more money, more profit.
So are you there for the pandemic, or have you been there for a lot longer?
No, I've been living here on and off for the last 3 years. Basically, I used to live in San Francisco, and when I left 3 years ago, I started living here in Colombia and traveling South America for the same reason that I mentioned, because I was interested in shamanism. Mm-hmm. And I had met Colombian shamans in Oregon 3 years ago. And then I got invited to see them out here in Colombia. And I'm already Colombian, so I have a house here, my family's from here. I speak the language. So I came out 3 years ago, and it was nuts, man. It just
talk about coincidence.
There's no coincidence, man. It's all aligned perfectly, man. So yeah, after that, I just decided to stay here because I realized there's something hidden that we don't have in the US that I think is missing. And I'm not saying it's shamanism, I'm not saying it's plant medicines and all that, but something has to do with that. And, I just stayed here for that.
So what have you been doing the last 3 to 5 months in Colombia? Just wondering.
Well, I went to a shamanic trip up in this mountain range that's still virgin forest.
Nice.
And this is led by a 72-year-old shaman who is in amazing shape. This guy's fit, he has abs, and he hikes mountains by himself for days. Like I've never met somebody that old and that fit, that in shape, and not just physically but mentally. He's just like
Sharp.
like a presence, man. So like he was organizing this expedition, and I helped him with that. I'm the translator. He also wrote a book on his experiences in this mountain range, and the whole thesis of the book is that this mountain range hides a portal to a different dimension.
What?
Really?
And throughout the years, he visited this place looking for this dimension, this portal, and at the very end, after like I don't know, like 13 years or something of trying to do this, he gave up, and he ended up going back just because he was basically persuaded by this group of people that wanted to visit this mountain range, and he's the only living person right now that knows it that well, because he spent half his life going there because he had just like this fascination with this.
So
with this
hang on,
idea.
did he ever find a portal though, or at least come close to it? I'm just curious.
Well, he wrote about it, and he says, yeah, he did. He found a
He
portal,
Wait,
and he found a portal, and he went through the portal, and he visited Atlantis, the lost city.
get out of here. He
What?
actually-
Yeah.
So wait, he actually published this book and everything? What's the
it's-
title called?
It's called Manoa. Manoa is the indigenous word for Atlantis
Okay.
here in Colombia with their tribe, right? There's
Yep.
different tribes here as well. So yeah, he wrote the book in Spanish, and this is one of the shamans I met 3 years ago in Oregon, and he told me about it, and I just fell in love with the idea. So I told him, okay, I'll translate the book for you because that sounds amazing, and I
That's good.
translated it to him in English, and right now we're just working on getting it published out in English. So that's the idea. But
That's
the book is incredible, man. Like there's information in there that I would have never come up with myself, and I don't think he came up with it himself. He's not like an imaginative person. He's just like a very clear-headed person.
It's probably the experience they encounter.
Who knows, man? I think so.
Wait,
like
so there's a portal in this mountain that takes you to another dimension to see Atlantis?
yes, and that's
great.
not a rare thing. I mean, it's been spoken of that in Mount Shasta in like Marin County or wherever that is, like in North California. That's also a portal.
Really?
That's like a very old, ancient portal. There's
That's
lots of
crazy.
places all over the world. I think in Mexico there's places.
But see, this is the
Um,
kind of knowledge that no one knows about, to be honest.
Well,
So,
Yeah, I mean it's nuts. Like I went there with him like a few months ago. Like you were asking me, like we went there with a group of like 12 people, mostly Americans, and it was a good expedition, but we weren't really. There were people in the group that didn't have the vibration necessary, like conscious-wise, to be able to like let it flow harmoniously. So essentially, we had all these like little hiccups, but I don't think they were accidents. I think it was us. Like we weren't ready, like in our presence, as a group. So we didn't get to go up all the way into where the portal is. But that was the idea anyway. So next year we're organizing a better trip, and that we're actually gonna have like a documentary crew because they want to film it. They want to make a whole film out of it.
that'd be dope to
mm.
experience, man. That'd be,
Yeah.
or- yeah, that's awesome.
wait,
though.
so what do you mean by so how do you I don't know. I've never even like heard of this before. So like how do you so you're saying like the people there weren't ready for the experience? So like what do you need to be ready? Like I don't understand that.
Yeah. So basically, we had one guy who I don't want to name him by name, but
Yeah.
we had one guy who had a very influential role in organizing. And when we were there, like, I'll just give you like some context. So when we're doing these kind of expeditions, we're out in nature. There's no comforts. Like we're bringing our own food. We're bringing everything. We're also using plant medicines, which I don't know if you guys have known about that concept a little bit, but ancient cultures from all over the world throughout all of time
Yep.
that never spoke to each other, they all had these same common patterns, which where they would use mushrooms or trees that were infused with DMT or roots, things like that,
Correct.
whatever was around them, and they would interface with them by creating these brews, ingesting the brews. And a lot of these brews are violently like emetic. Emetic is like they cause purging, like vomiting.
Mhm.
Oh,
So it's this entire like therapy basically, and it cleans you out physically, but it also mentally what it does, the way I describe it is it puts the ego in its place and it allows you to experience oneness in your consciousness. And so this is a state of being. This is a state it's beyond a state of mind. It's like a state of presence, a state of being. So, you know, like if you read about like saints and like people like that were very pure in history, they had a certain vibe to them. They were very open and generous, and like they didn't hold on to the results of something. They were just present and happy in being. So what I'm trying to say is this guy was not there. This guy was doing it mostly for the ego.
Gotcha.
So there was like money involved, you know, there was like the glamour of like organizing this big expedition. And so I just felt like we weren't really tapped into the vibe that this beautiful place, like this mountain range, was expecting in order to reveal its secrets.
So everyone has to align on that? You're saying, is what you're trying to say?
I mean, the more people that align with it, the better. But if you're not aligned with something, there's no portal for you. Like my friend Sirata is the shaman I was telling you about. He went there throughout like a 13-year period, and he did so many like purifying therapies. Like he would cleanse himself, he would do fasting, he would bathe in this lake, he would do all these rituals. At the very end, he didn't see anything, so he gave up. And the only time he went back after that was because he was hired by somebody, by a group, and then they lost somebody in that mountain range. So a kid got lost. So he had to go back and find this kid. The only time that portal opened for him was when he was looking for this kid. And I think, this is not confirmed, but my thesis on this is because he was not attached to the outcome, he wasn't looking for a portal this time, it opened.
Okay.
Because it doesn't allow ego to interface. Like you have to just be pure and not be holding on to anything.
But how do you not, I mean, now that you know about it, how do you not think about it though? It's kind of weird.
Right.
That's the catch-22.
Yeah.
That's the catch-22, yeah.
No, that's pretty cool experience, man. I mean,
so now next time you go in, you have to leave someone and then be like, oh crap, and then go back and get them. That's the.
Hey, bring Robert with you. Leave Robert behind. We'll go.
Oh no! Don't leave me. I don't...
All right. As long as you sign a waiver, though.
There we go. No liability.
Yeah, it's not on us. Yeah, man. It's funny because when you start traveling, especially through countries that you don't really know about, it's like this whole dimension of life opens up. Like I would have never known any of this if I didn't come to Colombia, if I didn't meet this guy in Oregon. So.
But again, I mean, you said there's no coincidence to that, though?
There's no coincidence because the reason that happened, I think, was because I was at that point in my journey where I was saying, okay, I understand like LSD has its place, like all these different psychedelics have their place, but there's still some threshold, like some ceiling that they kind of hit. Gotcha. And you have to like break through that. And I think that the next level is plant medicines because they're more pure. They're more closer to nature, like their nature.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
No, I completely agree with you in terms of what you mentioned before, like how each culture didn't talk to each other. They all have their own ways. I mean, the same thing for the Asian culture as well. I mean, they have their own. And the same thing, like you said, in South America, same exact concept, right? I mean, like you said, they're so far apart, but they still have, I guess, similar patterns, you could say.
Yeah.
So I know you and I earlier were talking before the show, we're talking about the whole zodiac aligning to the elements, things like that. Just it's crazy. Like, and to me, it's like back in the days, like how do even people think about this kind of stuff though? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I have a theory on that because it's been, I don't know, my whole like dimension, my whole perception of life has changed so much in the last couple of years. Like basically, I think what they used to do was they would get to the point of mind control where the mind, the ego, the voice in your head, you know, that nonstop commentary, they were able to put that on pause, like completely put it silent. And when there's complete space in the mind, like when there's no talking, information comes up from the subconscious. And the subconscious, it's said that it's not localized to the individual. It's a global or a universal subconscious. This is what Carl Jung, he called it the, I forget what he called it, but it was like the collective unconscious, something like that. So when you have a dream, they're saying also like this is a dream that's like an impulse coming in from the subconscious of the universe, and it's just visiting you. So I think what meditation and all these things are, it's essentially like silencing your ego mind so that this information that's always there underneath can come up into your head and like give you some information. Like that's how it happened to me.
That's crazy.
Well, I I don't think there's ever been a time when my mind is
Shut down.
empty. Like there's never
Crazy,
time.
man. That's torture.
It's just like always running. Like there's never a time when I'm not thinking of something. I'll be sitting in bed for hours, like just not.
So to your point, my mind's like that before back in the days, like because especially you guys know me, I'm a very high energy person, but I think the past few years I kind of learned how to quiet that down a lot more, and so I think it's hard to be honest. Trust me, it's very hard. But I think also part of me is that even with consulting though, I think it's the ability to shut my mind off because I need to go to sleep. I need to able to control that. I think that helped me a lot because I had to learn how to sleep in planes, had to learn to sleep in different hotel beds. Just to able to calm it down or even quiet it down a little bit. It's kind of it's part of training. I think it's like more like I guess your mind's a muscle in a sense, right? You got to train it and use it. I mean, for me at least that's why I see that. It's kind of hard though. It really is though.
I don't know, Mike. I've seen you fall asleep everywhere, just random places. You can fall asleep anywhere.
He's talking about Napa, okay? Just because I was drinking. That's a different fall
asleep. No, there's like we're going around and like you will fall asleep. We go to Napa and you fall asleep at every single winery, even the first one. The first one you haven't drank anything yet.
That's alcohol based. That's
like you haven't drank anything yet and you're falling asleep.
No,
that's
man.
crazy.
Smell that wine. Oh,
hey, that's a different type of sleeping, okay? Let's just say, all right?
I don't know. I've seen you fall asleep very fast anywhere. Like it doesn't have to have alcohol involved.
But I mean, your mindset. I mean, I know Robert. You do think a lot. You definitely have like a very what's that word? Not energetic. You're very. It's just your mind is active. Like,
active.
Yeah, super active for sure though. But anyway, I don't want to take too much of the time to talk about this because I know we could talk about this all day long. This whole topic.
Yeah.
You know. Sure. But Bryan, I know you and I touched base on before, what we're going to discuss today is pretty much, how we see things, how capitalism has been playing around, especially with COVID. We've seen even more of push of the, kind of the pros and cons of having capitalism, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So we'll dive into that, but before we get started, so what are you drinking right now? Just wondering first. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking this really expensive, high-class, high-end box wine.
Box wine.
Chile Cata Blanco.
Is it where's it from again?
It's from Chile.
There you go.
It's down the coast.
Special from Chile.
So, what about you guys?
I'm drinking this Pinot Noir, Dunley Pinot Noir.
Nice. Very San Francisco.
There you go.
It's from New Zealand. It's not even a California wine.
I'm actually drinking a mushroom matcha, just chilling.
Mushroom and matcha.
Yeah, it's mushroom matcha.
Damn, that's such a Santa Monica drink right there.
It's actually, to be honest, I bought it wholesale down here, so I got a whole bag.
Did you pay $18 for it?
No, it was like I think like $12. Something like that. It's a whole bag. It's a big ass bag.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, but so jumping into the topic itself, right? I'm just wondering, let me get your perspective of what we've seen so far. What are your view on capitalism in a sense, and then we can, try to, put our own thoughts behind it. So again, keep in mind, listen, we're not experts at this. The whole point is just because we have our own perspective, we have our own bubble, and we see things differently, right? So the whole goal is just to try to gather, learn from each other. So
okay. All right, so capitalism in general, you want like
your view, your view.
My view on it,
good or bad,
All right. I don't think anything's really good or bad. I think I see everything now in terms of human evolution. Mm-hmm. So when humans came about, we didn't have money because the society didn't call for it. There came a point where we needed some means of exchange, so we developed this thing called money, and the thing I see with capitalism is that it doesn't compensate for the animal parts of being a human. So a human being is an animal, but it's also a god in a way. Like there's a divine being in there, but there's also an animal beast in a human. So we have like this high and low. Like everyone has like their highs and their lows. Like this is what it is to be a human. Like you're in between an animal and a god. And human evolution is essentially how many individuals are trying to live in their God state and not in their animal state. And this is actually going back to what we were just talking about, where you have an ego mind that's never stopping talking. It's always judging. It's always commentating. And then you have this higher intelligence that's not localized to you. It's this universal intelligence that you're a part of, that you're connected to, and you can tap into it, right? So I see everything connected now. So like if you ask me about capitalism, I'm gonna look at it with these lens of human evolution. So
your view before this, right, the past couple of years, has it shifted differently, dramatically, the past 2-3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten more out there over the last, like, yeah, capitalism definitely has its like these amazing qualities of like innovation, like it's like the competition that breeds innovation. I mean, that's amazing because it forces humans to like develop and invent. But I'm at the point now where I'm seeing the world and how it's reacting to this virus and to everything and to this like all the police states around the world. There's no like peoples that are free in terms of like a government. Like everyone's under a government, everyone's paying taxes to an organization that we call a government.
Yeah.
And there's no like free will there. It's like you either do it or you go to jail. So all of humanity
is run somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're all being held at the point of a gun.
Well, to your point though, I mean, that in mind, isn't that why we want law and order to a certain degree, right? That goes back to it, even though we'll point the gun to health. Because at the end of the day, I think law and orders, it may be necessary for safety purposes, or because at the end of the day, like I said, we're humans, but also at the same time, quote unquote, animals. I mean, we have different extremes, things like that. I mean, not going too far of the tandem in a sense though, like, you mentioned, earlier, right, in terms of like, it does help with innovation, but what are the things that I know you talked about a few issues you have in mind. What are if you can name top 5 things, what are the issues you think what's going on today, at least related to capitalism, or maybe part of it has to do with the human ego? So.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like limit it to just today because this system has centuries behind it, and it has the force of centuries of human ingenuity trying to make this system foolproof. So like the beginnings of capitalism were not the way they are now. Like now you can't do anything without being in the system of capitalism. Like you can't grow your own food because there'll be an ordinance saying that's not permitted on this land. You can't grow food, so you have to pay a fine. Like that's all part of capitalism, because capitalism, it's almost like necessary to have some kind of authority behind it, because it's I mean, there's like a natural part to it, but I think
isn't that like more of the, because that's like less of free capitalism than
correct. Yeah.
And like if it was free capitalism, they would be able to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And since we have our regulations based on our society or whatever, that might have been how we changed it to. So it might have been that's just like it might not be fully what the ideology of free capitalism is.
Well, we definitely evolved it, or kind of like, in a sense, push that to reform, in a sense, right? You can say reform because it like you mentioned, as people got smarter, civilization got smarter, we definitely reformed it. But you're right, it's like layers and layers and layers and layers of the different of evolution behind that. So you mentioned, so you shared an article, like the 600-page document, by the way.
I know you said it's a 600-page article yesterday, and I'm like, I don't know.
Book, by the way, it's not an article; it's a book.
A book. Okay. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, how am I supposed to read this whole thing?
So I mean, I haven't read all of it yet, but can you just give us a summary in terms of why you shared this in the first place? What draw you to this point, to this book? I'm just wondering.
Okay. All right. So the book is called "People's History of the United States" by Howard Zinn, I believe.
Yep.
And it's looking at history, the past 5 centuries, from the viewpoint of the people, not the governments, not the militaries, not the generals, not any of those heroes, supposedly. So the reason I shared it is because this is the other side of capitalism, and this is bigger in magnitude than what we are exposed to in terms of like the traditional capitalist story. Like, oh, there's a Jeff Bezos. Look, he's a success story. Look how inspiring. And yeah, that's all good. But on the other side of that, there's millions of people that have their lives limited because of some policy, not because of Jeff Bezos himself, but because of the policy that's invisible that is being enacted all the time in the capitalist system. So this book, it starts off with Columbus getting to the Bahamas, finding this tribe of Arawaks, which are these like natives basically living there. They had no weapons, like they had spears made out of wood, things like that. When the Spanish got there, they came out and they offered like these gifts to the Spanish, and they swam out to meet the ships, and they were like welcoming them. And they were basically humans. They were like, there was humanity in them. They welcomed these strangers, right? What did the Spanish do?
Kill
They
them.
genocided all of them because they were looking for gold. So this is basically my main point with capitalism, is that it promotes the animal part of us and not the divine part of us. It enforces separation. It doesn't bring unity because it's centered on this idea of private property. And private property, it's already a lower consciousness idea. Because if you think of private property, what it says is basically something is mine that's not yours. Well, there's an assumption there that the assumption is like, I am me and you're you, like we're different people. And if you die to my gain, for me, that's good because I'm gaining. That's not false. That's just one level of reality. That's one step in evolution. So the higher step in evolution would be we're all one. Like this whole planet is a single organism that's in harmony. It's like one ecosystem, right? And you're just like one cell in this giant organism. This is how the natives used to live. Like this is what Columbus found when he got to the Bahamas. He saw these like people that were basically living as one in harmony with nature and with themselves. So when I look at that, I just say, okay, well, which step in evolution are they in? Like the natives were probably in a higher step. They were probably more connected to everything, to the universe. What was Columbus connected to? His ego. He was connected to wealth. He was connected to impressing the queen and bringing back gold and slaves so that he could look good and have a statue. So like these things are all like part of us. They're all part of human nature, but which do we want to promote more, you know?
Hold on. I stopped recording on accident.
Nice.
Don't worry, my Zoom's still recording the sound.
Okay.
So we're good.
All right. We're back. All right.
Okay.
Nice.
So Bryan, you brought out a good point up in terms of capitalism, how it kind of promote that private properties in a sense. But do you think there's a sense that where capitalism can promote probably community in a sense, or is that maybe we need to evolve to a certain degree, right? Because I think like there's the good thing about it is that it does promote innovation for the for obviously for if you have an issue, you have a problem, you try to solve it, you promote innovation to try to solve the issue, right? But what if the problem is a global thing? It's a community issue, right? For example, let's take an example of space, going back to space. To be honest, even though it's done privately by, right now, how Elon Musk trying to push technology not evolved before, but before it was in the hands of the government, it took so much longer, it took so much more money, right? And even though, it's not really an issue in a sense, but it's more about how he's not doing it for the gain. But listen, at the end of the day, this guy could have just retired. Like literally, he could have retired after PayPal. I don't know why he risked 5 more times being bankrupt and just try to form these, these revolutionized companies in a sense to push the technology, push the better being for human being in a sense, because ultimately he wants us to kind of expand. But again, I think this is, for me, it's a kind of like a pro in a sense of what we gain out of capitalism, but also the bad thing about it is that who's actually, I mean, we obviously there's the other side of things, like you mentioned, like it shouldn't be, hey, you have to lose something for me to gain something, but it is though right now.
It is.
And it's sad to say that it is, but to a certain degree though, like, do you think that it could change or it could be evolved to something a little bit better?
But let me throw this out there as well. Like, isn't like you were talking about the animalistic side of human nature and like
the greediness?
Isn't that competition to take or like to outcompete someone else in this sphere? Like that's part of our nature, and that's like that's just how, like, I feel like capitalism like evolved because of our animalistic behavior, like how we handle each other, right? How we deal with that type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the impulse behind it, was this competition. I mean, instead of being in a field and trying to find the gazelle and fight each other for the gazelle, we're fighting each other for market share.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same concept, of course. But yeah, that's the idea, is everything evolves, but our form of capitalism is not evolving because it's not just capitalism anymore. There's a government element to it,
Yep.
which means there's this like element of force. There's a gun to your head. Like, you either do capitalism or you're out. So it's not natural anymore. We don't have an even playing field with our system of capitalism. It's wrapped up in patriotism. It's wrapped up in national security.
Everything.
And all of these systems play on the ego. They're all enforcing the animal part of us. Like, look how divided our country is right now.
That's true.
We're looking more like animals and less like divine beings, and that's exactly the purpose of these systems, because if we're divided, we're easier to control. So capitalism in its essence, it has a lot of great things, and of course it can evolve because everything evolves, but it's not evolving right now. We don't have the option to evolve it. Like, if Elon Musk wanted to build this machine that would give everyone free energy, free water, for life, for no cost, he couldn't build it because the government would shut it down. Like, that was Tesla's whole story, right? Not the car, I mean the actual man, Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what his whole thing was. And
the whole thing was energy, unlimited energy. Yeah.
so we don't have normal capitalism. We have capitalism wrapped in this government control institution, and it's been like that for a long time.
Yeah, we have some sort of like restricted version of capitalism. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So going back to your book, in a sense, though, like, why made you read this book? I was wondering. Well,
Because I think the mainstream narrative of capitalism is about the success, and it's not about the cost of that success. And the cost of that success, we don't see it if we don't look for it. Like, if you don't ever look at a Chinese,
success.
yeah, if you don't ever look at a Chinese sweatshop, if you're not aware of that concept, it's not just going to come across you in life. Like, you're not just going to run into it.
That's true.
So these things are hidden away, but that is the bulk of it. Like, that's the foundation of
And
capitalism.
it's hidden away on purpose, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's limiting human potential, like human progress. Like, we're not able to evolve as humans if the majority of humans are subjugated for a system that is supporting a smaller group of people that are in control. Like, the whole thing is just like not set up for any kind of evolution. It's meant for control and devolution.
So let's say that if there's no capitalism today, what would another system be to replace it, to make it better for everybody? I'm just wondering, did you have an idea?
If you read the first chapter of People's History of the United States, he talks about or something like that, a North American tribe of natives. Mm-hmm. And before Columbus got here, he was mentioning like how their society was structured. So in their society, women were valued. The family hierarchy was matrilineal, which means like instead of the father carrying the name, it was the mother, right? So the women would pick the counselor of elders for the community. Like, the women had this important role in life in their society. Their whole society, they didn't have stealing because they didn't have private property. So there was no stealing. There was no concept of stealing. They had no poverty because they didn't have a concept of wealth as we have it. Their wealth was basically food, nature, being in harmony with everything, and being in the community. Like, that was how they judged wealth. That when the Spanish came looking for, or the English came looking for gold, they were like, who cares about that? Like, you can't eat that. So I always think, like, what if they never got here? What if the Americas were allowed to unfold throughout these last 4 or 5 centuries? What would it look like if that culture was allowed to just normally develop like it should have, right?
But do you think that would have evolved technologically or even advanced from mindset?
Yeah, would we have these computers? Would we be able to do this podcast?
Yeah.
Would be like, is our
That's
life
very true.
Different?
So I think of that differently now, because I don't see technology as just like this hardware and these like electrical circuits and this motherboard. Like, now I see technology as a paradigm of how can you interface with nature. So in that sense, those tribes were way more advanced. Like, those nations, we should call them nations because there was a whole country of people. It wasn't a tribe. Those nations were more advanced in those terms of technology. Like, they were way more connected to the spiritual aspect of life. They were able to connect to the weather, to nature. They had vision.
Man, the math, building those pyramids, man.
Yeah, like they even here in like the U.S. I'm not in the U.S., but in the U.S., if you go to Ohio, there's this thing called Snake Mound, and it's this giant snake sculpture made into the earth, and it points directly at the summer solstice from the head. Like it's perfectly symmetrical, like
You
astrological
mean
precision.
the Serpent Mound?
Serpent Mound, yeah,
Oh, here, Rob. Here's a Wikipedia about it.
yeah. So imagine if that culture that built that, this is the one remnant. Like we have such few remnants of those cultures. Imagine if they weren't destroyed. Like what would they have instead of Serpent Mound? I think they would have probably had contact with extraterrestrials. They would
Really?
have they would have had a lot of influence with the nature around them. Like they would have harmonized nature and had it flourish way more. Like before the Europeans got to the U.S., the buffalo were like plentiful. Like nature was in harmony. So I see that as technology. Like technology is not just this like electrical gadget that
Correct.
we've invented. Like
Yeah.
technology is how do you interface with life, with reality, you know? So like it's a whole new dimension. Like we don't have that dimension in our country, but they did. So who knows what they would have gotten to?
And you're right. I'm reading this about this whole astronomical significance behind this. Is that how that's crazy how it aligns with the summer solstice sunsets? And apparently they suggested
Just
that
like
this,
Stonehenge.
yeah, that's right. That's just exactly like Stonehenge. So pretty much it aligns the rate of the lunar
Yeah.
alignments based on the curve of the effective body. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, you can like imagine what that culture would look like today.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they would have they did have means of exchange. Like they bartered things. They had, mediums and things like that. But I think yeah.
What do you think they would brought out the competitiveness at this to actually do better?
Yeah, see, I think that's like a Eurocentric idea of this idea of like, oh, they weren't progressing.
No, not just progressing. I mean, obviously, they've been progressing. They've been there for a while. They're able to build infrastructure, things like that. They progress
Yeah.
themselves. So, like, I mean, think about it. Now in today's, we still don't know who built the pyramid Giza. Think about this. There's a whole mindset behind it, right? The perfect alignment of those stones, the perfect alignment of how they build it. Those blocks are tons. It weighs a ton. How do you even get it up there? And they still haven't figured that out. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like you said, the technological or the math behind that, they were still probably a little more further advanced than more people think about.
And like
Yeah.
they're like more advanced at like naturally figuring out how to get things done. For us, it's more
Yeah.
like how do we like write this software to get this stuff done, and for them, it's like how do we use what's around us to get things done.
That's
I
true.
feel like they're more ingenuity in that sense, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, from my research into the pyramids, I don't know if you've ever gone to Coral Castle in Miami.
No.
All right, so we should go to Coral Castle. Coral Castle is
Wait, you lived in Miami? You have never been to the
No.
castle?
Yeah, I've
the
not
worst
been
guy
to.
in Miami right here.
Oh my god.
Hey,
The
by the
Santa
way,
Monica guy now.
I know, right? So go ahead. What's
Go
called
ahead.
about the Coral Castle?
Oh yeah, so it was built by one guy. This guy from Europe, I forget where, but Lithuania, and this guy was like 5'2" or something. He could not lift anything, but he built this entire castle out of these gigantic coral blocks.
Hmm.
And what they said that he did was he was using this cone type of device
Yeah.
to magnetically or gravitationally, I don't know, lift these gigantic blocks with this cone. So kind of like the architecture of the vibration of the cone with some other gadget,
Yeah.
it was giving off this like magnetic pulse, and that was able to move these gigantic structures. And
That's
I've heard the
crazy.
same thing for the pyramids. I've heard the pyramids. There's like these cone drawings or what do you call it, hieroglyphics, right?
Yeah.
That are basically like suggesting the same thing. There's some kind of like ancient technology that we don't have anymore that was able to manipulate gravity waves or magnetic waves or something.
Imagine you see a stone just floating around because of electromagnetic.
Yeah, I mean it's not impossible. Like we have magnets. Like
Yeah, it's
there's
true.
so like this whole like side of life of like using electromagnetism and gravity and things like that. We don't even have those concepts in the US. Like we think, oh, technology is Silicon Valley. Look at this cool app. Look at TikTok. Like that's
No,
like a toy compared to what they were doing. They were moving heaven and earth.
Yeah.
So like I think that dimension is missing. And I think if it was allowed to flourish, we would have gotten to another planet by now. Like we would have made contact.
So that goes back to that instant gratification in a sense that I think that's the reason why the technology right now that we're developing is for more about instant gratification for kind of the gain for now, right? Where before, back in the day, it was more about for the gain, for the greater sense of community, perhaps, you know, like you mentioned before, it's not about the individual. So, you know, so the reason why I was throwing that example out about Elon Musk in a sense, like, hey, why is he doing certain things he's doing? You know, why does he want to go to Mars? Is it because he wants to go to Mars himself? I doubt that. I think it's just about survival, to be honest.
I mean, that's what he says, right? He says he is trying to go to Mars.
Yeah, but I think it's also about survival of the human being, though, in a sense, because he sees that we're destroying our own planet, to be honest.
Yeah.
And whether we truly or not, but you know, before going too far, the tangent about capitalism itself, though. But even if, you know, let's say that going back to your story about Columbus, and so let's say that if they didn't, let's say that for, you know, for hypothetical purposes, they did not arrive, do you think that eventually those two societies would have met regardless, in a sense? Like,
yeah, I think it's inevitable. Of course, like it's a small planet. I mean, we're basically looking at the early evolution of a species. Like, there's all these conflicts, but if they had more time, I think they would have had some kind of like weaponry that would have at least been able to defend themselves against, you know, Europe was just in the Industrial Revolution. They just got there first.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, there's no reason why like they had to be wiped out. I don't think it's part of human progress, like necessarily to wipe out the indigenous of a whole other country.
I completely agree now.
I agree
So
with
now,
that. Would do you think that they would have evolved in a different way versus, say, like how Europe evolved with their industrial age and everything? Do you think we would have gotten to the same place? Because it's possible that they could have just like come out to the same conclusion, just
or evolve slower. You know,
just like they're in a slower pace, but then they're moving in a different, like,
hey Brian, they could be late bloomers.
The same goal, right?
Well, all right, I'm gonna say something that sounds even weirder than everything else I just said. You guys said that's cool, right? This is a whatever goes podcast.
Nah, it doesn't matter.
Whatever you want to say, man.
All right, I'm gonna say this, like in all seriousness, magic is real. Like magic is real. Like Harry Potter magic, but not like Harry Potter, but like that, like witches and like. Okay, so magic was studied by the great people in history, like Isaac Newton, Da Vinci. I think Einstein even looked into it. I'm not sure, but there's a book called Real Magic, which is amazing. It goes into like all these clinical trials of magical experiments, which is basically if someone is standing there and I look at them, can they feel that I'm looking at them? If someone tells me, can you guess what picture I'm thinking of? And if they tap into their frequency, they can do that. So this is like the most minimum scale experiments that we have, right? Yeah. But what I think would have happened is these other cultures that were more in tune with nature, in tune with the universe, I think their magical powers would have developed more, because we had magicians in Europe as well. I mean, Da Vinci, like Sir Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton, actually, he's credited as a mathematician, but he studied alchemy way more than he studied mathematics.
That's true, he did. He studied way. I actually read about that before, yeah.
And when do you ever hear about that in school? So this goes back to my point, like, we don't have normal capitalism. We have a governmental structure that filters what type of capitalism we're allowed to do. But anyway, if the indigenous of the Americas were able to basically develop that, who knows, man? Like, they would have been doing time travel. They would have been jumping into dimensions, like we were talking about. Like this stuff is not in our normal day-to-day life. That doesn't mean it didn't happen in history. Like, history is written. There's so many books and literature about this, you know.
Well, history is written by in a sense, dictated by who was government is running, you know, right? For example, when the Alexandria Library burned, they had to rewrite some of those books. I mean, think about that. It's the same thing exactly when the Roman Empire fell, you know. So who's those scholars, things like that,
it's written,
you know,
by the winners. Everyone. Whoever's in charge is gonna write the history.
Actually, going back to that experiment, the magic thing you were mentioning, I always was curious in a sense, like, why does someone? Okay, so for example, me and my friend did an experiment before where like we both close our eyes. So let's say she closed her eye first, and I put a finger in her forehead. and I asked her, hey, can you feel something out of this? Am I doing something? She's like, and then every time I did it, she said she felt something, and I was trying like, no way. And I did it like 5 times. Like she's like, no, there's no way. I'm like, how does she know I'm doing something? And keep this in the mind, like she couldn't see the shadow, anything like that at all. And then I asked her to do the same thing to me as well. And every time she did something like closer to my forehead, I felt something.
Yeah. Well, there's an aura around you. Like that's a proven thing. There's like a bioenergetic field around every single human being, and it emanates from the heart. So the stronger your heart vibration is, like the more love you have within yourself, the stronger that field is. And if you interface with someone else's field, there's an effect, like you feel it. And I don't know if you've ever looked at the double slit experiment in quantum physics. Have you guys heard about that?
Now, what is that about?
I've heard about it, but I don't remember what it's about.
So they did an experiment where they pushed these, they're trying to measure, is light, does it behave more like a wave or like a particle?
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
Right? You heard about it? Yeah. So what they do is they push this light beam through this slit in the wall, and then they see the effect after it passes that slit. So what they found out was if they observe it, it behaves like a wave or a particle. I can't remember, but if they observe it, it behaves like one of them. And if they don't observe it, if they look away, it behaves like the other one.
Yeah.
So this was like the shocking thing in quantum physics, because what it said was observing something changes its state in space-time. Like it has an effect on it. So they're saying, well, why would you observing it? Why would that affect anything? And this goes back to the magic that I was talking about. It's not like you're you and that thing is that. Like there's a connection there, and we don't see it visually, but there is a connection there, like on the quantum level, or on the subconscious level, on a very primitive level of nature. Like there's a connection there. So this stuff is real. Like this. So this is like our scientists.
They call that the observer effect, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. But I think it's like hypocrisy to say, okay, well, look, that's a quaint, interesting effect. But then they say, okay, all this stuff about magic and like all these like shamanistic rituals, this is all like voodoo stuff. We don't care about this. It's not real. Like it's not real technology.
That's true.
Like, like they're not putting these dots together, But I'm not involved in any of it, so I can put the dots together. I don't have a career on the line. So
well, not only that, you don't. I mean, your only gain is your own knowledge.
Yeah.
Which makes, I mean, at the end of the day, and to be honest, like, otherwise you would, if you were not interested in this or learning about this, you wouldn't be, talking about it just today, in a sense, But it's just, how kind of like it ties to eventually, so overall you're trying to say that capitalism is tied to the human effect, to how we, even though, yes, it is, even the current system right now, like you said, is kind of, I wouldn't say rigged, in a sense, pretty much structured for the certain type of folks.
It's rigged, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can say it's rigged, I guess, but
it's a clever rigging, because it doesn't seem rigged if you do well in it. But if you're not doing well in it, oh shit, it's rigged.
Yeah. But also, like, is that now, let's say that people who doesn't do well in it, do you think that's because, I mean, it could be obviously a side effect of the results of that, but also at the same time, because you may not be born into it, right? You may not just, also, three things can affect, right? The way you're born into it, because some people just get a head start in the game, right? Because it's your family members, things like that. The second piece to it is that how intuitive can you learn? How fast can you learn the game, right? Mm-hmm. And third of it is comes to, the education around it, that whether you have a environment good enough to learn, to put yourself out there to actually learn this game, to kind of relate to number two. Part of it is that for me, in a sense that at least the way I grew up into this, I never thought about it in a sense that, okay, wow, this is, you always taught that, hey, you work hard, you can gain something, you make something out of your life. But when you're a kid, right, you don't think about this kind of stuff. Okay, wow, what happens if I fail? I do this, things like that. And kind of having the blind vision, you say you just got to work hard. This is what, your parents probably came to America, right? And my parents came to America for that, for that whole American dream situation, right? You work hard, you succeed in life, things like that. So overall, do you think that that concept was more of just like a full concept in a sense? Or is it more like, in a sense that it's just kind of forces people to just do the job in a sense, and you were all enslaved to the system?
I mean, I think the concept is not a bad one. It's basically try to progress, try to develop yourself, and results will come. That's a law of the universe, you know. Like if you say, "Oh, I can't stop my mind from thinking, but I'm gonna just try to meditate for 30 days. I'm gonna sit for 20 minutes, and I'm just gonna breathe, and I'm just gonna listen to the sound of my breath through my nose." If you do that at the end of 30 days, your mind is gonna change its biochemistry. Like your electrical circuits are gonna have a different pattern. Like that's in everything in nature. Right?
I agree with you 100%. Before that, I did not believe meditation, and the last 4 years, I've been trying to practice that at least a couple times a week. In a sense, I 100% agree in that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, but the thing with capitalism is, if we don't compensate for human corruption for the animal part of ourselves,
Yeah.
if we don't accept that we have an ego, and if you're in a position of power, the ego is going to be so in this like delusion of grandeur, you're going to think you're almost like a god over other people, which is what happens to these people that are successful. They start thinking they're these higher beings.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're
They
in
know
the
the
higher,
best for others. That's why they say know the best.
and it's the most condescending thing, because
Yeah.
if you're truly a higher being, you recognize there are no others. This whole thing is just one organism, and like even the entire universe is just one organism expanding itself. What happens in your body is happening out there in the stars, like this expansion and development. So that's more of a higher state. But the higher states that we have, that we consider, are, oh, this guy has $1 billion now, he has 3 rockets, he can go to Mars. So it's not even recognizing that there's an ego in everyone, and that ego is inherently corrupt if it gets fed too much. So already I'm already like not on board with that, because if you win at this game,
Yeah.
your ego is fucked. You're not gonna think you're one with everything. When you die, you're not gonna say, okay, I'm releasing the body and accepting oneness. You're just gonna say, oh, nobody touched my money. This better be the way I left it, whatever. Like it's just,
you don't think that people evolve as they get older? Hey, I've gone through this game already. I've won this game. I'm going to give back to the community. You don't think that's real then, in a sense?
I think it's half-assed,
It is?
because I think it's half-assed because for them to get to that point, how many people did they have to step over? Maybe they didn't hurt anyone on purpose, but 100%, if you get to a level of being a billionaire, there are people that you left like high and dry behind you. Like there's like a path of burning people behind you, like metaphorically.
But you think that was done? Okay, let me rephrase this question. But do you think that people could have done it in a better way where they didn't have to hurt people behind them, or let them drive, right? So for me, in a sense, that I love seeing my friends being successful, and I would love to see them rise with me, in a sense. And that's one thing that I think, because for me, I don't like to see someone left behind, in a sense, but I wanted to be able to everyone elevate each other, right? That's the whole goal. But you're saying that there are no the current billionaires, whatever they have. You don't think that they try to do the same thing, in a sense?
I think he's saying that even in the case where like you and your friend group may elevate, there's people that you've left behind in the same breath.
But at the same time, though, not everyone wants to be at the same level as you are, or trying to follow you in a sense, right? That's not my fault. I can't help that, right? Everyone has their own goal mindset. So how do you, like?
Yeah, but think about it. If you want to do well, but you spend your entire lifetime amassing wealth for yourself, this idea of private property, right? It's mine and it's not anyone else's. If you spend your entire life doing that, how defined and solid is your ego at that point? By the time you hit 50, 60, you're not going to undo that. I mean, like, no one is going to undo Trump's ego.
Yeah. Well, you're working it out. You're working it out, and it gets bigger and bigger. I understand that point. Yeah.
Because it's not going at it from the right path. Like you're basically saying, okay, we can evolve individually if we become successful in this capitalistic game. But if you become successful in this capitalistic game, your ego is not going to allow you to evolve. So it's not gonna allow you to step to that next level of human evolution.
So you're saying that you don't think there is a successful person who has probably, let's say, they have, okay, I guess, got their gains in capitalism, but also evolved at the same time as the human being, though? Like, You don't you don't
Oh,
think
I
that's
don't think that.
you don't
No,
think
I'm
that's
not saying that. I'm not
okay.
saying that. What I'm saying is,
But it is possible, you're saying though.
I mean, I guess I don't know exactly your question.
So is it possible to have it all?
Oh, is it possible to have it all?
Yeah.
Well, I see it as a dilemma because, all right, there's two versions of having it all. Like, what do you mean by having it all? Do you mean I have all the wealth I'll ever need for generations, or do you mean I accept life as what it is with its pain and suffering? I accept it wholeheartedly, and when it's time for me to leave Earth, I leave with a smile on my face. Which is having it all?
So in a sense that I've done enough to provide for everybody else, for my family and friends, whatever it is. Yes, and financially, it's not a situation. It's not obviously not it's not an issue. But also, I had left enough wealth behind, where in a sense that I could do for the greater of the community in a sense, right? I don't have to worry about in a sense of kind of like it's just it's more about because everyone has to go through this different stage of life. And I've read, for example, I follow Ray Dalio very closely in a sense, how he done his certain things, but he's a very capitalist person in a sense. I can tell you for sure, definitely has an ego for sure. But to a certain degree, you become too righteous in a sense. I think that's the ego part of that, right? But what I've seen in a sense that, okay, but he also talked about his life in a sense that, okay, now I'm in the part of life where I have to, it's not about the game anymore. It's not about capitalism. It's how can I take my ideas, my view, how do we help this community, this world to elevate each other in a sense, So like China has done China has used capitalism in a sense to elevate their own people. Whether that's good or bad, we don't know. But they lifted literally a lot of people out of poverty, the millions of people out of poverty. But in a sense, there is not going to be a perfect person. Obviously, that's just, I think the beauty about human being is that the imperfection. But it comes down to is like going back to your original question is that what is the perfect mindset, the perfect version of and for me in a sense, having it all in a sense that I did what I did. Now I'm able to give back, and not giving back to. It's not about gaining. It's about actually leaving it behind and living a happy life doing it, getting back. Because ultimately, for me, at least when I volunteer, I get more joy out of the things I volunteer for, than I actually, let's say that do at work. Just because for example, when I was doing Habitat Humanity at college, I love looking forward every Saturday just because I knew for a fact that family is getting a home out of this. So a little joy in a sense, right? So like I personally think it could be both. I mean, and that's my sense of having it all in a sense.
Well, so when Ray Dalio gets to his retirement age and he says, okay, I got all the money I'll ever need. What's the point in that now? What's the next thing to do? What is his intuition? His intuition is to give back, like you said, right? He wants to give back to the world, right? So isn't that what you said? Like he's trying to like serve other people now that he's at his age of retirement?
So it's not just necessarily age of retirement. So for him, he was able to retire like 10, 15 years ago. So for him, it was about he talked about how, actually he wrote this whole article of essays about how capitalism needs to be reformed for the better of the community in a sense, for the better being of a human being in a sense.
Exactly. So what's the assumption there? Well, like what is the implicit assumption when he's doing that, or when you're helping build a house for somebody? The assumption there is that you and that person that you don't know are somehow connected. That if you help them, that somehow helps you, right? This is the idea of oneness. This is the idea that these ancient communities, these ancient indigenous nations lived on. That was their premise. Their premise was that everything is one, and the idea of life is to keep things in harmony and to grow together. What is capitalism? Capitalism is the opposite of that. It says the idea of life is you're separate from everything else you see, you're separate from every person, and if you collect your own private property, your own wealth, you're winning, and it doesn't matter if someone else is losing because they're not you. Those are two opposing ideas at the heart of capitalism.
Gotcha.
So yeah, absolutely. If you're a great capitalist, if you're a billionaire, I'm not saying you can't like evolve and you can't like elevate and experience this. But what I'm saying is it's not even trying to do that. It's the opposite. It's founded on the opposite principle, which is you're not part of oneness.
Gotcha.
We're not all the same. And then that's why I don't understand how we can use that as an avenue to get there, because the whole point of it is the opposite. It's about separation, and it's about.
So the definition itself, you're saying,
wealth.
pretty much is different in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, even the idea of poverty is an invention of capitalism. You know, like if we didn't have the idea of private property, we wouldn't have the idea of homeless people, because people would just live on the earth. People would just live with nature on the earth. So as soon as you introduce private property, you introduce its opposite, right? As soon as you introduce light, you introduce dark. Everything that comes into being immediately implies its opposite.
Well, there's a yin, there's a yang, correct? I agree with that part.
Yeah. So that this is why I'm like, this is the system we have. Like, I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if we want to evolve as a species, this thing has to change, and I don't see it changing.
But hang on. To your point though, right? So if you were to pick 3 things that you think that we should look into that could help change, what would that be? I'm just wondering.
I mean, in the world, like.
Well, no, in literally what you just talked about, right? Like.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that so capitalism has this funny aspect to it, which is that civil rights trump natural rights.
Civil right trumps natural right. Okay. Yeah.
So this is so funny, because when the English colonizers came here.
Can you give an example of this?
Yeah. So when the English came to America the first time, they wiped out the indigenous, and their excuse was they have a natural right to the land, but they did not subdue the land, which means they don't have a civil right to the land, which means we can take the land and we can claim it on paper. So capitalism has this idea of legal standing that is above natural standing. And we see it today. Like, if you're born on planet Earth, you're not allowed to just pick out a spot of Earth and build a house with your bare hands and grow food. You can't just do that. You have to pay somebody to do that.
That's true.
So you don't even have the option of living a natural life. Imagine you're just a being on the earth. You're more of a human. Before anything, you're a human being.
Yep.
Before being an American, before being a Democrat, Republican.
That level,
Yeah, it's a higher truth. It's a more fundamental truth. But that doesn't matter at all in capitalism. What matters is the civil law. And this is like their instrument. This is their trick that they use to basically manipulate the world, so
you're saying
that has to go.
You think that the mental perspective behind that is kind of like, obviously, like you said, it's part of the system in a sense that, so do you think that over the past, let's say 5 centuries and some of that, you think that has evolved to the worst or to the best in a sense? Like, I think
it's definitely gone worse.
Really?
I mean, think of it, it's an instrument, and it's been perfected over the last couple of centuries to the point where we don't even recognize it. If a company says we're going to build a pipeline through this river, if they just have it on paper, the majority of the public accepts that piece of paper more than they accept the fact that water is this inherent thing in nature, and it's the life force of everything.
Correct.
It doesn't matter that it's the life force of everything. Think about how crazy the words I'm saying are. The life force of every living
thing on
Earth.
Water to survive, yeah.
Every single thing on Earth, and not even just on Earth. But if they have a piece of paper that says we can drill here, they can completely destroy the source of life on Earth. And nobody bats an eye. This is how deep the brainwashing is. So the first thing that needs to change is natural rights have to be first. If we say that we need trees to live, if we need rivers to live.
That order of.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what other 2 things you think?
Okay, going back to this, like we're like. Natural rights are above our other laws and whatever, then that means that we would not build anything at all.
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
for example, buildings, right?
If we do anything, it's changing
the environment.
It's changing the environment, right? So if that law is first, like, where would we get to be able to build anything?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So it can't be an absolute law. It can't be like you can't knock down any single tree, because then we'll never do anything, right? So you're right.
Yeah.
So, but there has to be some compensation for the fact that people become corrupt with too much power. So we have to say, at some point, if there's a water source, you cannot touch the water source, because there's a whole town living on that water source.
Yeah.
You know, like we can't frack the coast because our coral reefs are destroyed and there's oil everywhere, and in 20 years we're not gonna have any fish.
Yeah.
Like we have to have some
would it
boundaries.
be that? Would it be that, or would it be more like if we disrupt one source, we need to create a different alternative.
So like you destroy one
Something
thing, you
like
have to create another thing to kind of.
That's an awesome suggestion. Yeah, like I would love.
I feel like that would be better. Like that's a more complete thought than just like not disrupting the source. It'd be like if we change something, we have to also make it right somewhere else.
You have to offset it.
Have to offset it somehow.
Yeah.
Imagine if the world adopted that idea that you just said, Robert. Like imagine if the whole world just said, okay, let's do that idea.
Yeah.
Like we would change overnight the whole planet if we decimate acres of the rainforest. Maybe in like Bali or something, we're planting more rainforests.
Yeah.
But we can't even mention these ideas in the current system, because it's this holy system that you can't even judge and you can't.
Well, it's not profitable. Keep that in mind. It's not profitable.
But it is in the long run, because this whole climate disaster is going to be.
I feel like if it went in, we would the geniuses of the earth would find a way to make it profitable, right? Like somebody's going to be able to make it profitable, and then they'll be able to, like, those people will elevate as well. Like it's just somebody's going to figure out a way to do it, right?
And that was actually going to be my next point. You asked like what 3 points?
Yeah. The
next point was there should be some things that are not valid in the capitalist market. Like there are some things that should just not be part of the market. Like for example, healthcare.
I agree.
If you're part of a society, the society should just contribute a little bit to keep its people healthy.
Yep.
Or my personal opinion is food. I don't think food should be on a market. I think food is natural. Food comes from the earth. I think there should be gardens everywhere, fruit forests everywhere. And if you're just in a society, there's food everywhere, and you just take what you need.
For example, the community garden should be everywhere. Community garden should be everywhere in a sense, because I think that because if you're planting, helping out, you're part of it, right? So there's nothing valuable gain out of that. That should be everywhere.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be on the market. It shouldn't be like you have to have money to eat food.
Yeah,
like you were born on the earth. Apples come from the earth. You're basically.
Well, it's a natural right.
It's a natural right, exactly. So that natural right should be respected before the civil rights should be respected. So our identity basically has just been like upturned. Like we think we're American citizens before we're human beings.
So what if it's a fancy food? Let's say it's hard to get, how to come by. Like now your skill sets apply. Let's say that you need.
And that's So this is like the debate, right? Like there's like a middle ground. So a good, like maybe the suggestion is nobody should go hungry ever anywhere, because the planet can feed multiple times the people that are
the
on
basic
it.
food itself, the basic vegetable, basic fruits, basic vegetable. Yeah.
But if you want to go fancy, and if somebody wants to pay you to be fancy, then that could be a market. You know, maybe we decide, okay, we have restaurants, but we also have food gardens everywhere.
But that adds to the fact that like these people who want the best ingredients are going to go out and take all of the best ingredients, right? Like if they're getting paid to give you this high quality meal, they're gonna go out, find the best ingredients, and take those first, and make sure.
They're probably gonna grow it first, to be honest, if they want the best ingredient.
Yeah, but
or pay someone to do it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But I think if we adopt something where there's certain parts of life that are not touched by the market, there's going to be more abundance there than we have now. So like we can't even comprehend the level of abundance that's available on the planet.
Well, it's the same thing for water. What pisses me off is that, Coca-Cola and those companies are tapping water. A bottle of water. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? These are our natural spring source water. Just because you claimed it and it's this territory.
Yeah.
I think water should be free in general. Like.
Yeah. But if you say that, they call you a socialist. To do bottled air.
And then people in China, they're like, they want fresh air right now. I could have sold so much.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. I just think like we are so far off of the natural way of life
Yeah.
There's nothing natural about our lifestyle, and there's nothing natural about the average human being on earth. Like the average person is not mentally healthy. They're probably physically out of shape. They're really stressed. Like they're in fight or flight mode all the time. We were not designed to be in that mode all the time.
We're in reactive mode the entire time.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we're not expanding and growing in consciousness as a planet. But the good news is there's a huge subset of people that are living like that.
So going back to your point, okay, what's the third point now? What is the third thing you think that it can help, like, or something that we had to look into, like that can probably maybe change, that needs to be changed?
Well, you're not going to like this answer. I think the idea of countries should be abolished.
Okay.
Because what they do is they give someone an identity that they take on, that they care about more than the identity of being a human among other humans. So all humans on Earth, they're a single family. We're all related somehow. We all
human beings.
blood relatives.
We're the same animals.
Yeah, but if you're born on one side of an imaginary border, which is just what some government decides it is,
Yeah.
then you have to hate this person over here. It's inherently wrong in terms of how it identifies people. So I think humans were meant to live in community, and we express ourselves through community, right? Like, in fact, all we ever are communities. Like everything is a community.
Yeah.
Like if you work at a company, that's a community. You know
Correct.
people. That like there's like a family feeling there.
Yeah.
If you're a police officer, your police force is a community. If you're like anything you do, you're in a community, right? It could be
Yep.
small, but when it gets too large, there's no sense of community. Like Amazon, there are communities within Amazon,
Yeah.
the company, but the entire company, they call themselves a community, but they're not all having food together all the time. They're not like calling each other, hey, how are your kids? They're not having Thanksgiving dinner.
But if you abolish countries, though, there won't be a sense of community either, though, because it's just one giant.
Oh, but that's my point. There will be only communities, because the human being is meant to express itself as a community, not as a country. Because
But it still kind of bundles up the group of people, though, don't you think? Like
People will
it's
still group together.
Yeah.
So
The thing
I
about
think if
like
people have
the thing about like the countries thing is like I agree with getting rid of countries, just because that's the only way we're all going to be on the same page of getting things fixed, right?
Correct.
If we're
It
gonna
opens
fix
up
stuff
everything.
for our world, like something like recycling or like that.
Compost.
Like,
Just
we
compost.
need the entire world to be on the same page, and that's the
Yep.
only way we're going to. Is we have one world order that has that like says that we should be all doing this, and we all agree to this as a
Like, for
as,
example,
like,
composting, right? Composting, everybody should be doing composting.
right.
Because
Yeah.
that eliminates literally 80% of the waste. Like alone, right? Food
So
waste
like
is
I feel
such
like
a-
if we
Yeah.
want anything
Wow.
to like as like an entire world, an entire human race like move
Yeah.
forward, we all need to be on the same page, and that'd be one way to do it. But I
Yeah.
agree with Mike where like people just the communities that they come up with are going to they're going to create their communities, and naturally are going to be defending their own communities
That's
versus
true.
others, right? So there's always going to be some sort of like
Yeah.
separation there.
Yeah, there's always a tension in nature. Yeah, that's a good point, because nature is not peaceful all the time. There's tension in nature. So I think that having tension between communities is better than having tension between countries with nuclear weapons. I think the community tension is more aligned to what natural living would be
Yeah.
than having countries where one person can dictate, okay, these 30 million people are going to die now just because one person says so. Like that's not natural, and that's accentuating the ego, and that's dangerous because we're not meant to have power over so many people. Like the human system is not meant to it. Like it gets corrupted in every single case. It gets corrupted. Like
But if it's though with sense of community, like you said, let's say that magically this happens, right? Everybody has their own community. You're still gonna need some kind of structure or some kind of hierarchy in a
Yes.
sense, right?
Yeah.
But
yes, but not countries. You don't need a
Correct.
country necessarily. You can
So-
have like task forces. You could say this community is going to be in charge of protecting this part of the forest. This community is going to be in charge of the water source. This community is going to make cars. This community is going to make computers. So it's interdependence, but it's not dominance. Right now, what we have is dominance. We have a government that dominates the people.
But you don't think that that's like natural? Like if we just like went like go back to like high school, right? Like you go to high school, there's like communities in high school all over, and then there's some that just like are elevated above others, right? And they
for example, go back to high school. Like you said, the way you actually, a good example. I remember like going to a new high school. You can see the group of people just sitting there scattered around. They all migrate their own little community in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And like you get to try to figure out where do you fit in the community. And
I hated those days.
Yeah, and then there's certain groups that are definitely going to like bully other communities, right? Like they're just going to try to dominate them, and that's not even like there's no like system there. It just happened, like naturally evolve into that, right? So it's like we have to figure out a way to like
can you even stop
take
that
into account, right, and be able to like adjust that.
I think that's inherent though. That like I don't think there's stopping that because nature forms itself in hierarchies.
Yep.
So there's always a lion that's the main lion in the pride. Like there's always that one bird that's like in the middle of all the birds, right?
Yeah.
So that the problem is not the hierarchies. The problem is the size of the control. Instead of being a community that's more or less made up of people that are basically on the same vibe, we have countries now where it doesn't matter if half the people don't agree with something. If we need to go to war, we're going to go to war. So the hierarchies are always going to be there, but we don't need to have them in terms of countries. We need to have them in terms of communities.
There's also like the people who have that dominant personality versus people who are followers, right? And the people who are followers are just going to go with it. So how is that different? Like creating these communities where like someone who has like natural charisma could like get a bunch of communities together and form a country, right?
A region.
And then we have multiple people like that, and then those people are gonna fight. It's gonna be. It seems like the same type
I feel like
of situation. It's just not like it's not just like regional at that point in time, right? Like right now everything is regional. It may be that it evolves the same way, but it's not like I don't know. Like I don't really know the answer. I'm just saying like it seems like this was just how things are going to evolve. Anyways, like it like if we get rid of nations, it's gonna
come back to eventually,
right?
Well, I don't know because a country is essentially a monopoly on who can lead a region. There's no free market in terms of which community you want to follow and join. It's like you either follow the president or get out of the country. It's a monopoly on who you're following. But let's say we have a community model. Let's say we have a community model. Then if you don't like this one leader for some reason, then you find another one because he's not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine if there was no concept of a presidency and Trump went out, campaigned and said, hey, come follow my community. Come join me. Do you think California would have joined him? Do you think like New York would have joined him? Like they have to be under him now because of the concept of a country. But if we had concepts of communities, they would have said, okay, whoever wants to join him, go join him, but we're not going to join him. We're going to stay over here and do our thing.
But ultimately, though, one community becomes stronger, they can try to dominate other communities for the purpose, though. I think going back to what Robert's saying, that it is involvement of nature. So think about this. Do you think history repeats itself, right? And I personally think it does because just human nature, and to a certain degree kind of drives that. Yeah. So if you think about this in a sense that during the 1930s, think about this, when at the desperate time, the whole world was in depression, and a community was just trying to find another community to blame. Hey, this is shitty, and this is not our fault. But you know what? Let's take back what's ours. How do we become stronger? How do we become better? And yes, you can say it was a country, but ultimately that's what led to World War I in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. And my biggest concern is that we may end up repeating ourselves for certain things right now, in a sense, to a certain degree in the 1930s, because right now we're hitting hard times, and where populism may be big again, just like it did back in the 1930s. And I mean that's a whole different topic we're gonna pivot on, but But what I'm trying to say is that, though, going back to what Robert Point was trying to make, that even though we do a community-based, you know, global worldwide and not countries, I think eventually it will evolve to that. I think maybe this is how probably we started out as of, you know, during the Middle East. You know, that's how we probably started, and then eventually evolved to that.
It also goes
So
back
what
to
if-
my question of like would the natives here eventually evolved into what we are now,
Countries.
right? Like in the,
Yeah.
it's all like the same kind of situation. Like it was just like very unknown.
Because they
Yeah.
did fight, you know, the natives did fight against each other region, you know, right? So they had little
Yeah.
wars in there. So
Yeah.
You know, they had a lot of wars for
Yeah.
years.
yeah,
So what if Hitler was only able to campaign as a community leader and not a president? What if he won his campaign and his community said, "Okay, we elect you to be our community leader,"
okay.
but that just means he's a community leader, not a country leader. That just means he has control over that community's military, but not the whole country's military.
Yeah, and,
What if
and
people
it would be
follow him?
like he would have to. It would be more work for him to get to
Yeah.
where he was, right?
But how big is this community, though? You know what I mean?
It's as big as the people that will follow him, and that's the thing. If a majority of human beings are interested in fellowship and in brotherhood, they're not going to follow someone like that. So naturally, nature will harmonize itself. It'll reach a normal equilibrium where a tyrant will follow people will follow a tyrant,
Yep.
but a whole country won't be forced to follow a tyrant, and that's the whole difference. It's the size of the control. If he can lead, I don't know, a couple thousand people, he can
Yeah.
do some damage. But if he has control of millions of people, he can destroy the world.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is like we're not meant to have control over so many people. It's not
But
designed.
it's gonna happen, though. It will happen.
It happens because of the militaries. It happens because we're under a gun. It happens because there's a force behind it. Like if you told all the people in the world today you can decide whatever you want, the world's not going to divide itself up into countries. But there's a military in every country that says you are part of this or not. Like
I agree. I agree with that. Like, no one would. They wouldn't separate into countries, but we may separate into groups that also have their own militaries, right? And then, and those groups may be just as large. Like there's no telling if they wouldn't be as large as countries are now.
It's true. They could be very large, but they would not be the only people on the block, and that's the difference. Right now, there's a monopoly. If a country wants to do something, there's no one else in that country that can really oppose them. There'll be opposition, but there's no one that's equal. There's no one that's equal to Trump saying we shouldn't do this because of the hierarchy of what we call a country.
So
I mean,
do
what
you
is
think,
a
though?
country anyway?
But I
Like think about the U.S.
No, but
You know
like
what the U.S.
what I'm saying is like it's like whatever it is, it might just be the naming of it. Like you name it a community or you name it a country, it could be just like something
be the
like
same
something
thing.
pedantic that we're like going over versus, you know.
But I don't think it's pedantic because one implies force, like domination, like absolute control, and the other one implies natural uprising, like a natural, spontaneous coming together of people. So I think that is the whole difference. Like if there's a country that says we're going to do this, that's force. The people within the country don't have a say in that, you know. But if there's a community that says we're going to do this, whoever's in that community that doesn't want to do that, if there's another community, there's another option. It's like the free market itself. It's like the good parts of capitalism. If there are other options, they're going to go to the options that are best serving them. So that's the whole difference. Like, there's no monopoly in that scenario.
Right.
But let's say,
monopoly.
So hang on. So let's say that, you know, the concept, let's say that everybody becomes a community, right? That happens, right? But do you think that can drive everyone doing the same thing for the better of the world? Like, for example, hey, everybody grow your own. It would be harder, I think, with the community because every community wants to do their own thing.
I think it'd be easier to have more well-being in the world, but yeah, you're still gonna. I mean, there's sick people that are just born sick. You know, like that's never gonna end. Yeah. So there's still gonna be horrible tyrants and terrorists and things like that.
Yeah.
But the idea is the scale of it. The scale right now is unnatural. We're in an unnatural scale. Like
so you're
one
saying,
man.
So would it be better if we took like the entire world and made it into states, like the way we have states now, something like that? but like it's open borders, so you can move between states.
Yeah, you can move between states, one currency, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that would be. I mean, think about that. If we had all these states, imagine what you would have to do to get a giant military organized to invade a whole gigantic group of people. You would have to convince all these different states to come
Right.
together.
It's just like
Whereas
more work.
right now,
So yeah,
work it's more balancing, it's more harmonizing naturally. Whereas right now, if a few group of people say we're going to invade this country, it just happens. Well, that's too much power in too few hands. It's unnatural.
my concern is that if everyone becomes one giant community world, and you're gonna still have your elitists in the top and controlling everything. That's my biggest concern is that, you know what I mean? Like, and at that point, I think it could be even worse, just because you have one set of group of people controlling
You
the
know,
entire world.
it might just be that like there's gonna be wars, and then we end up with the same type of thing where like we're all like in our own community because we've had all these wars to like and like combined all of these other communities that we've taken over, something like that.
Yeah.
What was that movie? God, what's her name? The girl with the arrow.
Katniss Everdeen.
Yes, yeah. So the whole
The Hunger Games.
Games.
Yeah, you know what the Hunger Games is based on?
What?
It's based on the U.S.
Oh, really?
It's
Oh, yeah,
based on
states, a different state. That's right. Yeah.
it's the elite, the people that are winning at the game,
Yep.
and everyone else is just suffering and literally fighting for food,
Yep.
while the rich people are literally vomiting so that they can eat again, just to have the pleasure of eating.
Correct. Yeah.
So, like, you know what I saw the other day that was gross? I was watching like a YouTube video of Sandra Bullock giving an interview saying that she gets injections in her face to look younger, and the injections are made out of the foreskin of Korean babies.
What?
Yeah.
Is that for real?
For real?
For real?
Oh my god.
Wait. She said that in an interview?
Yeah. She said that in an interview with Ellen DeGeneres. So
Oh my god.
think about that. Think about that and the Hunger Games. There is no difference. We have third world countries,
Yeah.
babies dying every single day, and we have celebrities injecting themselves with foreskin to look younger. The celebrity has achieved this position with that a natural human being would have, because they were taught all their life to win at this game so that they can achieve success and glory.
Yeah.
And they did it. They did what they were told. You can't undo that easily. There's like generations of.
But do you think is that why a
brainwashing
lot of successful entertainers become depressed?
Absolutely, 100%, because they're chasing their fulfillment
dream.
the wrong way. They're
Yeah.
going through it down the avenue of the ego, and that's always real. The ego is this manifestation in your mind temporarily to help you interface with the external world. When you die, the ego just kind of dissolves because it's just electrical network. But the soul never dies. Your soul never dies. So when the body dies, your soul goes on somewhere else. They're trying to find their soul by chasing the ego. They're going wrong. They're going backwards. They're going down the wrong way. So this is the premise of capitalism. This is why, at the very heart of it, I think it's just flawed, because it's telling you to go down one way to achieve something where it's completely the opposite of what you should be doing. You know, like Sandra Bullock is never going to feel how she used to feel back in the day. She could put all the foreskin she wants in her face, but really what she wants to feel is love and fulfillment and connection, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're human beings. We all want that, though.
We all want that, but what does our system tell us? It tells us to do the opposite. It tells us
To be individual.
step over whoever you need to step over. You got to be a badass and just get yours and don't worry about anyone else.
I think this generation though is thinking a little differently. Because
You mean the younger generation?
the
Or the
younger
older?
generations now are.
What are we,
thinking
man? Are
more-
we young or old?
We're young.
I think we're in the middle. I think we have like,
No. We're younger. We're
no,
younger. Okay.
no, but I feel like we have the mindset of both, where we can see both sides of it. Because like we're like, at least me and Mike are like still like in the rat race, trying to like chase the game, right? So it seems like
Good luck.
like we so we're like in the middle of all of it. But I feel like I've talked to a lot of younger people, and they don't have the same
drive. They don't have the same drive, to be honest.
Yeah,
But you know why?
It's not a drive. It's not a drive. It's just they don't value the same things that we value. But it's more like they understand, like, after, like, from what we've gone through, they understand that, like, oh, money can only get you so much happiness, and then after that, like, there's nothing left.
Well,
like,
also
there's
too,
nothing
like,
more.
so that's just why the younger generation travels a lot more than us, and but that's also why they're also getting into debt as well, though. They also fall into this same hole. So even though it's made easier for them to do the kind of things like that, I think the younger generation, they do want the natural thing. They do want, but they don't realize the hard work that the other generation has put into it to get certain things. And it's kind of like, do you choose, like, I mean, they're eventually going to learn the hard way that, hey, you have to work regardless to a certain degree to get certain things. But, going back to what Brian's saying, the system probably makes it push it that way, and you see it kind of shifts it that way. But right now, the younger generation may be reaping the benefit of our generation, to be honest, because we kind of push that effort already into that, and they're using that effort to, to kind of, you can say, enjoy life a little bit more longer. So, for example, like for us, when I came to the country, I would never expect me to be the position that I am today, where I had the freedom to travel to do whatever I want, because my parents never had that. And every time I went on a trip, my parents were like, "Do you guys ever work? Do you ever work, son? Do you ever work?" And I'm like, I work all
All
the
right,
time.
Mike. I also say the same thing about you. I also ask the same question. Do you ever work?
I work all the time, and my parents work, 13 hours a day for 7 days straight.
Yeah.
For 360 days a year, in a sense, right? So, like, I think every single generation, in a sense, that is taking a little bit of benefit of what we gone through, But Robert, to your point, I think it's, in a sense, the capitalism behind that, in a sense, has kind of helped them, but also kind of hurt them. Like, it helped them from a human being perspective. Okay, they had this free time to see things, to understand, to actually they value life a little bit differently. Yes, I agree with that part. They value life a little bit more about their own freedom, their own sense, and that's just why you see a lot more of that. But also hurt them in a sense that because of this current system, it may have put them into the debt. It might have put them into, and that's just why an average A people right now is probably staying home longer after college, maybe up to 25, 26. Before, people once you got out of the house, 18, you stay out of the house.
Yeah,
that's true.
Well, I mean, did they have any choice? Like, did your parents have any choice? Like, you could either do what they did or find another way of life that provided all their needs.
It was either work hard or die. Like, it's
so their background
go somewhere else, right? Like, there's nothing else.
Well, going back to with the beginning of this conversation, was that some people are just born into a certain certain aspect of their life, and some people are just not that lucky, and they don't get ahead of the game, because it's where you're born. Like, let's say that you took away the country situation, no matter where you're born, it wouldn't matter, because everyone's at the same level, right? But let's say that, because obviously in real life we have different countries. My parents were born in China during World War II. They were raised in World War II, so they had to get away from that situation to get ahead of life, in a sense, right? Because if they stood there, they would never know what happened. So for them to fly to South America was an opportunity to kind of gain that, that next step, so they to have the freedom to do whatever they could do. They could do to kind of have a better lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think the younger generation is basically seeing the limitations of the system.
It is. They are.
Our climate, our Earth is like, what is it, 12 years away from complete climate disaster.
Yep.
There's more attention. There's more like Cold War atmosphere now.
Yep.
The majority of Americans are unhappy, overweight, obese, addicted on Oxycontin or whatever. We're more divisive than ever.
High corn fructose syrup.
So I think they're just seeing things for what they are, and they're just saying, what is this? This is bullshit. Like, why are we going to follow this system if it doesn't lead to anything? I mean, celebrities are depressed. Like, how many musicians have killed themselves?
A lot.
So I think they're just seeing things, and because they're younger, they don't have all the years of brainwashing to filter out the truth like older people do. Older people are steeped into this brainwashing for years that they don't even see it anymore.
Well, they're more naive, right? They have a clearer lens. They have more of a clearer lens.
I think there's also like a lot of seeing what like the previous generations have done. For us, like, we saw our parents our grandparents how they lived, and we wanted a better life, so we moved to where we are now. And like now the next generation is looking at us and is like, oh, they're still doing stuff that just doesn't make sense. So then they're moving towards a way where that like which makes them more happy and like which
but
could
they have
be
more free time to
happier.
do that though. They have more free time to do that right now in a sense.
I mean, they're all like
the virus?
people who are lower generation than us. They're like getting out of college now. Of course, they have all the free time in the world. Like they're not working, and especially during this time, during the pandemic, nobody's working. So,
but I mean, actually, the funny thing you mentioned that I think about this, like during the pandemic and when everybody was not outside, you saw how the earth kind of restored itself a little bit too. You see the different images, how everything was peaceful and quiet. But at the same time, though, like, is that what something that was done on purpose?
What, the pandemic?
Yeah, like to kind of like harmonize the earth a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go down the esoteric route, if you want to do like the esoteric route, there's nothing that's a coincidence. So this is all. There's a Vedic scripture. The Vedas are the original Indian texts in Sanskrit, and they explain essentially the evolution of the world. And what they explain is that right now we're in a period called Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is this period of destruction and basically like dissemination, like just deterioration. So we're essentially like tearing things down so that we can build a new phase of reality on Earth. So this was all written down like thousands of years ago. And if you like subscribe to that, then this has all been happening before. This was all written down already, and this is all part of a plan. And I honestly do believe that because my own life just showed me that way too many times to be a coincidence. Like there were so many synchronicities throughout the years that when I had this like vibrational state, things were happening that were like magical. And this is what like made me think the way I do now. It's because it kept happening over and over again. And I was such a skeptic. I'm like, this stuff is not real. But it kept happening to me. So I was like, oh man, maybe I should look into this because it's kind of happening a lot. And now I'm like, yeah, of course, it's all energy. And energy is all one. Like it's all one field of energy manifesting different forms. So yeah, I mean, this is not a coincidence. I think this is the karma that we've reaped because of how we've treated the planet. The planet is naturally giving back to us what we gave to it, which is batshit.
Except we're looking for excuse.
Except
we're looking for excuse to blame
coronavirus is batshit. That's what we gave the earth. So, well, like it's the same thing, man. Like when Trump won the election, I knew that this country was gonna come to a point where it was just gonna like be so tense. Yeah, 100%, because it's karma. Like if you can see an event and you can see the effect it has.
But do you think though this also can drive unity though, in a way?
Wait, what? Wong,
Absolutely.
have you seen our country?
No. I mean down the road. I'm not talking about now.
No, you're right. You're right, because every force has an opposing force, right? Every action has a reaction. Mm-hmm. When there's so much tyranny, that's the darkness in humans, right? That's the darkness manifesting. Whenever the darkness manifests, the light also manifests. Yeah. So when Trump won, immediately the world became darker. But immediately, all the people that were on the light side, essentially all the people that were about oneness and unity and peace, they all sprang into action.
Yeah,
there's always a harmonizing force. There's always an equal force. So right now, as bad as it is, I think it's going to be really great in the future. But it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
And I kind of agree to that to a degree. Yeah, I think going back to before we got this rabbit hole, we were talking about this already, but but I think the energy level thing. I think like for example, Robert, when you moved from Jacksonville to San Francisco, it was a whole different vibe that day for you.
Yeah.
So I think for seeing.
What was that like when you did that? When you moved?
It was just. It's like the same feeling you get when you go to like a new country and you like see like the different like how other people live. Like it just feels, it's like you have a different aura around you, and it like opens up new opportunities, right? And you're like, and you feel it felt so much like I felt so like a weight was lifted off of me, because I felt like in Jacksonville, I was like so stuck in that spot, and I felt like I couldn't like grow. I couldn't learn. I couldn't move. Like it was just like that was where I was at.
Do you think that was a mindset though, or this more?
Yeah, I feel like as soon as I decide, like as soon as I like got my new job and was like I'm going, like
not looking back,
everything was like, oh, I actually can move forward, right? I can do something else, and it changed the way that I like looked at stuff. So then coming here, I felt like a completely different person. Like everyone who's known me before and after, like, oh, you just look so different from when you were in Jacksonville.
So I used to live with Robert in Jacksonville,
and
and then when he moved to San Francisco, when I visited the first time, I'm like, Robert, damn, you not only like you lost the weight, but your energy and your vibe is different, you know. And not only that, I think because the way I think he's also surrounded with different type of people that kind of drove him to act not only to act different, it's just to kind of like, okay, wow, this actually he has more self-confidence. He also, in a sense, developed. I personally think you develop a little bit more of like your own perspective, your own view to kind of drive forward. While, like you said before, when you're in Jacksonville, you were kind of like, in a sense.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Florida, so like all I knew was Florida, right? So I'd been out of the country. I was in Florida, and like I went out of the country one time to Singapore for work. And then after that, I was like, I need to get out of Florida, right? And that was the mindset after that point. So, like, just like being in Florida felt so constraining and restricting.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really good. How do you feel now being in San Francisco?
I love it here. I love being here. I love the people that I have in my friend group, and I love like where I work and all of, like I just love everything about San Francisco.
He actually learned how to cook too.
I don't know about that. Like I have HelloFresh for a couple of days, and the last one went pretty horribly, in my opinion. But
but anyway, going back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like, so you mentioned the darkness, that how everything kind of brought into, let's say that the election, whatever, the whole world got into this darkness, right? And I do think things will get a little bit worse, then it gets better. But I think that you can also start seeing the light of certain people coming out. So you can tell the certain type of people who they are during this crazy time, because and I think you can start seeing more of a community. Going back to the whole community story, you can see more communities showing up, right? Regardless of whatever the situation is, regardless of whatever topic you're talking about, in a sense that any kind of trouble, you can start seeing community rise up for certain things. And to a certain degree, but you can also see that during these crazy times, you can see how the vulnerability of capitalism is too. Because if you look at other countries who doesn't have strong capitalism, they're the one that did the best in a sense to a certain degree, who is able to come through, versus countries who have, the high, in a sense that because let's say that they were trying to get masks, right? People are trying to get masks to sell it for profit in a sense. While masks should be because everybody's getting, we want to make sure everyone doesn't get sick. Free masks for everybody, right? So like you don't want to, in a sense, capitalist country, like you said, it kind of drives that in a sense for that profit first before people. So
yeah, but it also gives this argument that it's the only way to get there. It's the only way to provide for everyone. It's the only way to keep everyone safe, and it doesn't allow. It doesn't even recognize, but it doesn't even allow another option to come out. I mean, if there's a new communist uprising, that thing gets squashed immediately. It doesn't matter if they have to kill a dictator or kill a president, take over a militia, like whatever. So we don't have any other basically like viewpoint. Like we don't have any other examples but capitalism right now.
That's
because
true.
We've wiped out every other option out there. So it's not
I don't know. A lot of other options have gone through, but then they never like finished. Like they couldn't continue.
Yeah, they couldn't.
Yes, but what about now? Are there any new options happening? Like evolution never ends. Evolution is constant. So society is evolving just like a human evolves. But our society is not evolving. It's solidifying in itself. It's becoming more concrete.
So wait, hang on. Do you think that like I'm just throwing this as an example, right? So China, how they, whatever communism took over China, whatever the whole history behind that. However, though, in order for them to get out of the poverty, they have to lift the socialism out of, become a little bit more capitalism to kind of raise everybody out of poverty.
Exactly.
So they had to become a little bit more capitalist in a sense to do that. But because of capitalism, they were able to do that, but not because of them being, socialist in a sense. So I think there's certain systems that had to be at the right time, right place for certain things to work out. But you're right. Right now, I do believe that there are certain bounds that need to be restored in order to kind of move forward. But you're right. Right now, we're solidifying and we kind of see what actually the problem is, because right now everything's becoming more visible.
Yeah.
And part of it is that, though, now we're acknowledging there's a problem, but how do we solve that? Because right now our current system may not able to allow us to solve it, to be honest, like you said earlier.
Our current system doesn't even recognize a problem. Our current system says, if you're hungry, it's your fault. If you're homeless, it's your fault. If you're addicted to something, it's your fault. Like, it doesn't even pretend to try to solve it. It's intentionally what's the word, like, giving the illusion. It's pretending. It's tricking you.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. It's a trick. It's a brainwash. So there's no, like, imagine if what China did, this market experiment that they did. Imagine if we had all these different communities, each experimenting with their own type of capitalism or quasi-capitalism, socialism, whatever.
Yep.
Instead of having just one model of an economy, imagine if we had all these different multiples of economies. Then we could just see which is working better and we can learn. And that's called evolution. But we're not even doing that. We're not evolving our society. Our society is devolving. It's coming apart, actually, because it's too concentrated. It's too concentrated and too many people are buying into it. As long as many people will buy into it, it's going to stay. It's going to stand up on its own.
But do you think, though, it could be reformed, even though it's one, let's say that it's one system right now, but you don't think it's too late to reform that?
Well, nothing's ever too late, but are we reforming? I mean, do you see any reform happening?
Well, I see a conversation happening, though, to be honest. I see a lot of conversation happening. So, and that's the first time I've been hearing it more and more vocally the past 20 years, to be honest. My first time hearing about this was during college. And then I read about it during what happened during the 1970s and stuff like that. And then now I've been hearing more and more about it. I mean, going back to what I said earlier. So Ray Dalio kind of brought that up to a point. Like, yes, he's a billionaire, whatever it is. He's bringing it from his perspective. He admits that he's a capitalist in a sense. He also admits that in a sense that, hey, the system is wrong. It's just wrong. For example, there shouldn't be any kind of this wealth gap in a sense. This wealth gap doesn't exist, and because he explains these few things that is causing this wealth gap, and part of that is that, let's say that we have this system right now, right? And let's say that we're trying to solution this, and it's going to be very hard, but you're stating that we don't even have another viewpoint to solution this. So you're saying that, do you think that this cannot be fixed in a certain degree, or is it too late?
I think
it's not too late, though. You said, though. So
I think the governments of the world are not interested in anything changing because they're in power.
Gotcha.
And what they're interested in is solidifying that power and making it really stronghold. They're not interested in change. The people want change. The people have always wanted change because the people are the ones being oppressed.
Correct.
Can it happen? Yes, it can happen. Do I see it happening? I see what you're saying. I see conversations happening, but the conversations are about tactics. They're about minutia. They're about these small little changes, but the paradigm itself, they're not even touching it. They're not saying, wait, is our entire paradigm of life right? I think it's wrong. If we go through this paradigm of life that you are a single person and you're like self-sufficient and you're not connected to anything, that is already like starting off wrong. Anything you build on top of that, it's not going to build towards evolution. It's going to just keep things as they are. So, yeah, I mean, the conversations that are happening, maybe that's like step one. But
step zero to be exact. And
yeah, but I mean, like for us to like do something radical, we need to act radically. This is why I left the US. This is why I live in Colombia now. What I've been trying to do the last couple of years is build a community here of people that are just living naturally and evolving the idea of living in a community. Yeah. Not going back to living in a commune and eating lettuce. Like, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, ultimately, though, I mean, Colombia, it is to a certain degree, they do take advantage of capitalism in a sense, right?
Every single country, yeah. I mean, most countries.
How do you hide from that, though?
the only solution, I've thought about this a lot. So the only thing I can
I
come
know
up
you
with
have. That's
is
just why I'm asking you.
the only thing I can come up with is we have to design a small society that is so obviously better than what we have now. Just like in technology, if you build out the next Facebook that's 10 times better, naturally the market's going to go there. I think we need to do the same thing with society structures.
So
We
wait,
need to build.
you're saying an utopia?
Yes, we should always be trying to build utopia. We should never stop that because that's an eternal thing. That's an infinite limit. Like in calculus, you never reach
Yeah.
it, but you always trend towards it. But we're not even doing that. But
Well,
what I think we should do is build some kind of a utopia society and tell the world this is what we're doing, this is what we learned. Help us build this because we need this. And whenever that happens, enough people will realize this is so obviously a better system than what we have now that we're just going to adopt this.
but then now the scary part is that the country's going to see this and they're going to get scared. They're going to be like, oh shit, this is actually
Yep.
working. They're going to try to take power from us and take away from
Yep.
that, and they're going to try to squash that.
But there's a difference now. So before in history, when that happened,
Yeah.
it was basically gone. Like the governments would come and just wipe everything out. But now we have the internet. So now if we do build something successfully, we just have to publish it. We just have to get the
Transparency
information
there.
out. Somebody somewhere in some country at some time will have the opportunity to build it and build it better. But everyone just has to have one step forward and publish it to the world so that it's in the collective consciousness and then it's out there. Like just us talking about this is great.
Mhm.
Imagine if we're building something that's even better. Imagine if we're building something and then showing the world on the internet. Somebody somewhere in the Ukraine or something is going to say, hey, let's build that here, but we could do this part better. And that's evolution. That's how evolution works. So we need to do that. But
Well, like
right
you
now,
said, the transparency is there. The digital, the for sure, it's the age of information. Information will
yeah,
travel fast. So
yeah. So I think we have a good chance. I mean, the one thing though is we have to live as if we're all one single being, as if the earth is one being.
Mhm.
As long as we live separate and we have our own apartments and our own cars and things like that, I'm not saying you can't have nice things, but
Yeah.
the paradigm of the human being has to change for us to see evolution in the world and like in reality.
But
If this
everybody,
doesn't change, nothing's gonna change.
but everybody has to change though. You see that?
Yeah, it would have to be
Not
like
everybody.
it would
Not
have to be a
everybody.
big group
Enough
of people.
Enough people.
Just 1%. Just 1% of people have to change.
You say that you've been trying to work on that the past couple of years in a sense, or at least the past couple of months in a sense to do that. And so like, what is the progress have you seen so far in Colombia, or at least in your community that you're trying to like inspire?
Well, man, the most hopeful thing is that there are so many people that are seeing our system for what it is, a system of control and of division and of non-evolution. So many people are seeing it now from so many different countries that are opting out. That's what has me optimistic throughout all this is that there's enough people now that if we do all get together and build something, we can get it done. Something can happen. Like there's enough people that are awake now in consciousness on earth right now. More people than ever before, I think.
Do you think like a sample of like utopia quote unquote of us community like Burning Man, it kind of helps in a sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like Burning Man, this is like a proto-shamanistic type of culture that doesn't even know what it is. But what I think it is, it's the inner human spirit trying to express itself.
Yeah.
But it's doing it through this corporate, capitalistic Burning Man event, right?
Yeah. Or mass as that.
But the essence is there, though. The essence is there's something between everything, and we want to connect to it. So, like, the idea of Burning Man is there. There's enough people that are into Burning Man and into this alternate way of living that it's happening already.
Yeah, the utopia part of it. Yeah, correct. I agree. And I mean, most people think utopia is like, oh, it's a one fixed being. I completely agree with you said that it's always striving for the best in a sense, because in a sense that our mindset, we're already doing that in a sense. Like we always trying to get more knowledge. We're always trying to achieve the better version of ourselves. And so why not with society in a sense? Why not with community, or why not do that in our own, like you said, economical structure in a sense?
Yeah.
And right now we're more like, instead of evolving, we're kind of solidifying, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad to see that, because I thought we'd be much smarter to a certain degree, But you would think you would think that we'd be, could actually take a step forward, but I feel like we're not even taking a step, one half step forward. We're like,
No, no, because the systems that are in place that are pushing society forward are not built on human evolution. They're built on wealth concentration and control. So, I mean, I think if we want to see this change, then it has to start with the mind. You have to overcome the ego. There's no way of evolving without overcoming the ego. And the only way to do that is to look at the ego for what it is. So there's many ways to do it, but you have to separate from it somehow. So like meditation is the easiest way. Going to take a plant medicine ceremony or a psychedelic, a mushroom trip in nature with friends. Like all of these things, what they do is they separate you from your ego. And then you just see the ego for what it is. It's just this like mental construct that helps you get by in life. It's like a tail, it's like a wing, it's like feathers. It's an attribute of the human being, right?
yeah,
But it's not who you are. So that's the first step. And if people can see that, then they can realize, well, if I live a life based on the ego and the ego is not real, what is my life? My life is not going to be real. My life is not going to be in harmony with nature. I'm not going to ascend as a being. I'm not going to evolve. My children are not going to be in a better state than I am. So it's all related. If we want to change society, the first thing is conquer your ego, separate your mind from your ego, understand that you're in awareness and that you're connected to every single thing. And
so
the
do you
earth
think
is
that would
literally
change
giving
capitalism
you,
to some degree though?
it already is, man. Like, look, I used to be a software developer in Silicon Valley, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not real. I'm out. And now I'm doing Ayurveda.
Yeah.
So it changed my life already. Like, I'm not into capitalism anymore like I used to be.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying it's evil, but it's not the way forward. Like, we need to evolve it, right?
Gotcha.
So
So
everybody should meditate.
Well, for the listeners, right, who are listening to stuff like that. So like, I guess the main takeaway, then, well, like, is that what is that what you recommend? At least change yourself first in a sense to kind of,
Yeah. Because that's all you can do. All you can do is change yourself. And as soon as you change yourself, your vibration that your body and your mind is putting out there, your bioenergetic field, that changes as soon as you change your mental construct. So essentially you're tuning yourself. It's like you're a guitar and you're tuning yourself to a better frequency.
yeah,
And as soon as you change your frequency, every single thing is inherently energy at its foundation, and like attracts like. So if
That's
you
true.
change your energy, whatever you're looking for is going to come to you. Like when I started getting interested in shamanism, I didn't do anything to meet these shamans. I just went to a festival and boom, there's like a bunch of shamans there, and I lived with three of them for a month after that festival. I didn't do anything except change my own state, and everything came to me. And this has been happening since I was a kid. This is why I'm like so into this whole side of life, because it happened to me so much that I couldn't ignore it anymore. You know, like I was a skeptic before growing up, but now I'm like, every single thing is energy and it's all connected and it's nothing but energy. And simply like changing your frequency changes your reality, and changing your reality will change the reality of people around you, and those people will change the reality around them, and so on. It's a domino effect. It's a fractal. It's all connected. So all you have to do is make the switch in your mind and everything else falls into place.
All right,
That's
that
it.
makes sense.
Look, it's lightning right now.
no, to be honest,
Connected.
I never I never expected this conversation to kind of drive from capitalism to connecting to, well, human being in general, like the way we live lives. But you're right. It makes sense. Everything's connected to a certain degree. So I don't, I want to, kind of, in a sense, to wrap this topic up in a sense to after we move on to the extra MSG funding segment. But from my perspective, I think I think I do see hope. But one of the things is that you're right, Brian. I think in order to, the starting point is changing ourselves. I think getting the message out there is having that self-awareness to actually even want that. It's kind of believe it's a little bit harder because, like you said, the older generation has been more of just a little bit more brainwashed to a certain degree, or they're just too busy working to try to meet ends. It's up to the younger generation because they had the free time to actually think about this more, right?
Yeah. It has to be the younger generation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for us, to be honest, we're lucky enough that we have the time to talk about this kind of stuff. Imagine the older generation try to even talk about this. They don't even have time to do that. They just worry about the survival for the family.
Well, that's by design. I mean, a capitalist system has you from the time you're 6 years old, all day long, you're in school until you're 18, and then you go to college, and then you're in college all day, and then you go to a corporation and you work there all single day. So 24 hours a day, your mind is distracted. Your ego is constantly
busy.
talking.
That's true.
So you don't get in
and
trouble.
This is on design. This is on purpose, because the second you have stillness in the mind, then the higher intelligence comes through. And they know this, like the designers of the system know this. That's why there's always a radio playing. There's always noise everywhere you go. It's so difficult to just find peace.
So wait, do you think this quarantine has helped that though?
I think it has, yeah. I think people are waking up, yeah.
It's like a blessing in disguise.
I think it's a karmic representation of where we are now. It's like we've gotten so far down the dark path that the natural thing is to rebound and go back to the light. And that's how everything is in nature, everything in the universe. It gets to one point where it gets too extreme and then it balances itself out. And that's what the virus is. It's balancing out the way we treated nature, and it's balancing out how people have been living their lives in this like never-ending cycle of doing things. Like we're not meant to just do things. We're meant to be and experience, right?
Yeah, and I talked to a few folks about this, and we value now after, especially before the quarantine, after the quarantine, in a sense, is that we're valuing things differently. We're valuing our health more. We're valuing our people, our family more, and we're valuing our time even more right now. And at least for me, even though I've been spending the last couple of years to think about how I can evolve in a sense, but this quarantine time, I feel like, because I've been hanging out with my parents, and I could see like, okay, my concern was about their well-being, but also at the same time, okay, wow, I've been living with my parents since I was like 16, 17, whatever, 18, and like, holy crap, this is different in a sense. But now I'm approaching it more like I'm the parent and they're just the child, to the kid, like, stay home, guys, stay home. What are you guys doing, So, and I do appreciate the downtime, because you're right, because for me, especially my job, I travel so much. And I like the peace and quiet now. I get my job, my things done efficiently. I have more spare time to think about the stillness, and I'm thinking about what should I do next. And I think part of it, I mean, between me and Robert, is like, I think for this to start this podcast, it wouldn't happen if I didn't have this downtime.
That's right. True. So what does that tell you? Your creation ability, your ability to create and manifest things is limited by the current system. Yeah. And as soon as the current system has some kind of a hiatus, immediately your creative energy is exploding.
It just explodes. It goes up. Yeah, I completely agree.
What does that tell you? That tells you you're like a horse in a stable that wants to run, but you can't go anywhere because you're in a little box.
Yeah.
Imagine the billions of people on Earth with all their creative energy, and all they're doing is working at some shoe store in the mall selling Nikes. Like, that's what capitalism has given us, the suppression of the potential creative energy of humanity.
But not everyone wants to create, though. But I don't think everyone wants to.
Not everyone wants to create. I feel like it's there's like everyone has that creative ability, but not everyone wants the same thing. So like there's only certain people that want to get there. Let's move on to our next topic. We're gonna wrap this up. We've been going for like almost 2 hours now. So let's wrap this up. And we're gonna move on to our next segment, which is, before it was like a funny, like whatever we had, like a funny internet thing that we have, but now we're gonna call it extra MSG. It's just like something that's like extra funny that we found.
What does MSG stand for?
MSG is I have no idea. I actually have a bottle of it in my place here.
It's a little extra spice to your life, That.
Oh man, that stuff is crazy though.
I mean, it's so good. It's so good. Like you want more of it. Like that's
that's just why we're doing it, because you want more of this. Okay, so I'll start with mine. Robert, I'll start with mine. Okay.
Oh, you're start with yours. All right.
Actually, did you send yours already?
I sent my link over already.
Okay.
So
actually, then let's go with yours first. Then.
Yeah, let's do mine first. So I have this I sent over the link if you want to open it up. Yeah, so it's this a picture of this cat in a quarantine mask, and the description is when you're on your 9th life. Like you're trying to make sure that you're alive, you stay alive.
Brian, you have the link, right? You see this?
Oh, I gotta open it.
Yeah, you gotta open up the link.
What kind of podcast is this, guys?
I can share my screen. I can share my screen. Hang on, I can share my screen.
I see it. I see it.
It changes. It messes up our.
Oh, that's right. The layout.
Our layout.
Yeah.
Holy moly! What's going on with that cat's mask?
I know,
mean,
right?
it's just he's
Looks
just
like
trying to be healthy.
He looks like the hockey mask killer in that movie, the cat version. He's looking like he wants to hunt something down.
I mean, I feel like he probably is, but I mean, he's being safe in the process.
Hey, he's on his 9th life, okay? So.
How do they get that mask on him though? Like, did they tie it behind his tiny little cat ears?
Looks like it.
And it's,
yeah, it looks like it.
They
cut out eyes. They cut out.
How can it be that? How can he actually see through those tiny holes? I don't know. I think he's using his cat sense.
That's really funny though.
All right, so should I send you guys mine?
Yeah. So go ahead. Just send it in the chat.
All right.
Mike sent his, so we're gonna look at that next.
Okay.
Is this in a? So the picture is a sign. It says 5 stars. It says, "Would poop here again. Pleasant ambiance, adequate ply."
Caption says, the bathroom.
Caption says, "We were cleaning our rental vacation home and found someone had left this sign in our bathroom." That is a good review right there.
I know, right? For the bathroom, it's a great review.
It's a great
Get that
review.
for mine.
I'm gonna print a bunch of those out, and then every time I stay at a hotel, I'm gonna leave it.
Oh my god!
Wait, you gotta print out the opposite too. You gotta print out the 1-star review where you're like, "Oh, this single ply is not good."
The toilet is too cold. Okay, I don't like the cold toilet.
Like, this was the worst poop ever.
The worst poop I could have taken.
Half a star. Well, all right. Let me. So mine is a video. How do we do that? Do we all play the video?
So we just play the video, and then
Yeah,
Robert's gonna
we'll
share.
pause at 0, and then we can play it.
Like, you're gonna play it and share the screen, or we all play it?
I guess we'll all play it separately.
All right.
Because I can't
So,
share video.
let me just tell you guys why I picked this video.
Go
So
ahead.
Bill Burr is probably like the funniest comedian out there.
It's so
Like,
good.
One of my
He's really
favorites.
Yeah.
And this one's about just how fucking crazy nature is. So this is the point I was making the whole podcast basically. It's like, nature is fucking crazy. And if you don't account for that, and if you don't manage that craziness, then you fucking start getting praying mantises that just chop things up with their scissor teeth. So we have scissor teeth too, man. Like, human beings are just as crazy. So we gotta understand that and manage that craziness.
All right.
So
That's
why.
Let's listen. See what he has to say. Planet fucking Earth.
This title's so good.
Where we're at.
I think God gave reptiles the fucking brains that they have because of the awful deaths that they have to fucking deal with. And I notice with mammals, I think that I believe have a bigger brain, right? You wouldn't know that listening to this podcast, but I believe they have a bigger brain. So they at least have the decency to kill what the fuck they're going to eat before they eat it. Except for
Those things are creepy.
bears
Bears.
and
Bears. Yeah.
Oh, look at
wild
the
dogs.
reptiles.
Wild dogs basically just, if it's small enough, if it's a rabbit, they'll rip it apart.
This is crazy.
If it's something
Dude,
bigger,
this-
they just
this
start
is
fucking,
like-
I don't know.
This is more real than taxes are real.
I like bears. I like watching them scratch their backs and shit. I like them sitting,
I like watching
in a
bears
pool
fight.
of water like they're in a fucking jacuzzi. I like when, as
Yeah,
I mentioned
bears
on
are
Rogan,
nuts,
I like
man.
when they
That's
ride
like
the bicycle at the circus. I'm into that shit.
Intense
I don't like
energy
them
right
when
there.
watching them take down like a fucking elk. It's just fucking ripping.
I'm just saying, look at the insects.
Things like I don't know how you watch
Those
that
things
shit,
don't
but
look like they're from this earth,
I kind of went down one of those fucking.
Dude, it's so
but they
creepy.
are.
Yeah, no.
Little rabbit
It's so
holes, and then,
creepy.
yeah, I discovered
Yeah,
That's how
this is like-
nuts. That's how nuts life is.
Look at that fucking thing the
Oh.
same way.
This is a recent
Again.
clip. Wow, July
It's
7th.
like-
Yeah,
It's like it went to a Gracie
yeah. Only the best for
dojo,
you guys.
and it has with like its front.
No, I
fucking
meing, I think
vice
you're
shit.
to your point.
It's
You know,
like-
get that this kind of segment to our
I don't
next
know, it
quick
has, you know,
topic.
like
You know,
the-
we won't spend too much time on this. So, you know, 2030, right? What do you think it's going to look like? I'm just wondering, Brian, what are your thoughts? All right, 2030, do you think we're going to be in Mars, or do you think? I mean, look what all this crazy shit happening already. We're in 2020 already. Just this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
man.
real.
I think
Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on this.
there's gonna be a major war in the world. But I also think there's gonna be an uprising of conscious humans that are saying the system is it's basically destroying humanity and the world, and there's going to be some kind of like a alternate society built by these people. And I'm saying this because I've met these people, and that's what we're all trying to do. So I think in another decade something's going to happen, but yeah, we're going to have like this extreme culmination of violence and war because the division is growing more and more.
Yep.
And at the same time, like we said, everything has a reaction. So when that happens, we're also going to see these light beings come up and try to do their best to serve the world and build something better.
Why do you think there's going to be maybe a major war, world? Like, why is that?
Oh man, like looking at the patterns, like there's a lot of patterns right now that are symbolizing that we're in the same era in terms of human progress that we were in the 1930s.
Yeah.
So like there was this scholar I was reading about. He says like every 80 years, the human race repeats the same cycle, and we go into like 4 phases of 20-year periods. And we just finished a 20-year period of basically like expansion and development, like in the 20s, like in the 1920s.
Yeah.
And what's coming now is this contraction, and contraction always brings with it violence, which we're seeing, and division, which we're seeing. So like it's happening now, you know, like
Actually,
China's gearing up for war, India's gearing up for war, Russia's gearing up for war. These countries are taking over like territories like Hong Kong.
yeah.
Like it's happening now. I think in 10 years, a war would have already happened or will be happening. But I also think there's too many awake people on the planet that we're just gonna all go with it, like we did last century.
But
Other people are gonna break away.
But I mean, like you said, though, right? There's so many people awake with it. But in a sense, that do you think that, let's say the next, 2-3 years in elections, you think people are going to wake up from that and maybe drive away from that, right? Because we know that's going to happen. It could happen. And don't you think that we will drive? Okay, Ray Dalio actually mentioned this, by the way, that he thinks that we might be repeating the same exact thing in 1930s. He literally said that word for word, that we may get into this situation if we don't see this whole or accept the changing of the world order. And he wrote actually a whole, I don't know how many pages of that about the change of world order right now. And in order for us to even adapt to that, we got to understand, realize why this is happening in the first place. And then, no, you can't stop it. But the question is, though, how do you avoid a critical war like that? Because it may not be a physical war in front of us. It may be just behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't think there's any avoiding it, because that's human nature. You know, like human nature has evolved a little bit, not much. That war is not a possibility. We haven't evolved that much, so we're still at that state of evolution as we were last century, and all the same elements are there. So I don't think there's any avoiding it, but I think there's enough people that see it for what it is, a mechanism of control, that they're not going to buy into it. And so I think those people are just going to break away and form their own society, and it's already happening. I think it's just going to get bigger. But yeah, there's going to be essentially 2 worlds on planet Earth. There's going to be this world of destruction and chaos and war and division, and there's going to be this like smaller world of people that are living in the recognition that everything is one. Basically like the evolution. So a part of humanity is going to evolve, and the rest of it is just going to do what it's been doing the last couple centuries.
I just think
and
that
it's on everybody. it's on everybody to decide which one they want to be in.
Yeah, well, I think from a civilization standpoint, though, do you think that there's going to be like a physical war, or do you think more of a, because I feel like right now, especially with the advanced weapons that we have right nowadays, I feel like it won't be. I feel like we will end up hurting ourselves more if we had that kind of war. In a sense, we end up destroying the world. I think we're smarter than that. I think it was more about
Do you really? You really think we're smarter than that? Like, I feel like
I
we
think
have like big enough egos to like not be that smart.
Well, I think a person I think a person is smart. People might not be together as a whole, but I think a person is smart. And then all it takes is one individual to kind of change that.
But then we don't have all like really crazy intelligent leaders either, right? Like, there's some crazy leaders out there. Yeah. I'm not gonna name any names, but yeah, there's a couple countries out there that I can see are just gonna be like, well, screw you, and then just go.
Well, and that's the reason why I think that those countries is going to drive other countries to come together to like, guys, they're messing up our world up right now, right? And eventually what's going to happen, it could be a cascade of things that may unite us, to be honest, because I'm like, why are we destroying our own world right now? The world's already small enough already. It's like, why would we want to fast track the acceleration of the destruction?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Most people think like that, but I think world leaders are so deranged in their ego body that they don't think like that. They think, how can we be great? How can we bring honor to our country? Like,
and it feels like more nationalism is happening within the world, right? So every country seems like they're looking out for themselves more.
You think more nationalism or populism?
More nationalism. From my perspective, I see more nationalism, just in general.
Yeah. Well, that's because I feel like it was kind of like those people being suppressed. Like, for example, like, you mentioned that Trump kind of, when they were elected, you kind of felt that kind of darkness coming in to a certain degree. But also at the same time, I'm not saying that maybe he done this on purpose or not, but he also at the same time did stuff that it kind of kind of helped people, wake up, because. Because, for example, the entire issue with the whole media thing, how able, you can see now to control the media for certain things. You can see, the different perspective. A lot of people has woken up because of that. So it kind of takes a bad, in a sense. You need something bad to kind of have something good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think the leaders some select leaders like Russia, China, US are trending towards towards war.
Yeah.
And as soon as they do that, it's instantaneously going to create people that are seeing the opposite.
Gotcha.
But they're still going that direction. So I think that's still going to happen.
And they're also the biggest, like the biggest, like with like weapons and stuff. They're the ones that are the most, that we have the most.
Well, but they're gonna realize.
And those things are related, by the way. The fact that they're the biggest is why they're the most aggressive and why they're the most deranged in the ego. Gotcha. So this is all bad. Like, the militaries are getting bigger, stronger. It's not for nothing. I mean, you can't build that up and then just not use it. They're meant to use it. So I think there's going to be that. They're going to use these militaries. There's going to be a war. And a lot of people are going to say the system is corrupt and evil and we're not part of it. It's still not going to stop it from happening. Capitalism.
Robert, we heard Google. Don't worry.
Wow, I thought the mic was here.
Hey, Google, don't be evil.
So I mean, Bryan, in a sense, so you're saying that 2030 would maybe be in a war or maybe not be, but however, though, you would say even after that, do you think there could be a positive outcome?
I think the positive outcome is not global, it's individual. Really? So if you decide to live a positive life, you will have a positive outcome. If you decide to follow a country and a system that is corrupt and going down a dark path, that's what you're going to experience. I don't think the country itself is going to have a positive outcome. The country itself is going to have a dark outcome, but individuals can have a positive outcome if they wake up, if they separate themselves from the system. Yep. And if they connect themselves to nature and to other human beings, they can have it. But there's a juxtaposition there. There's the country itself, and then the individuals in the country, that are either following along like sheep or waking up and separating from it. It's completely individually.
So like what? So now another question for regards to 2030. So what's gonna happen with COVID in 2030?
I mean, I think COVID is not the biggest issue, man.
I think
COVID is
COVID
like
is a 2020, 2021 issue.
yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be a 10-year issue. I think it's just
The
right now.
bigger issues are the governments.
Yeah.
The government, the police states, essentially. I mean, we haven't even talked about police states, but the technology and police state combination is the scariest thing on earth right now. It's so Orwellian. I mean, and it's growing bigger and bigger, and we're supporting it. We're feeding it with our energy, with our life force energy. This is why I left Silicon Valley, because I realized there was basically people that were just trying to get wealthy to feel better and to enjoy their senses and like, go out and be the hot shot. And I realized, man, most of these people were probably nerds in high school, and they have like self-esteem issues, and maybe this is how they're making up for it. And now they have some power. Power feels so seductive. Like, man, I don't know. I had such a bad feeling when I was there. And my coworkers were all unhappy, by the way. They were making good money, and they were all unhappy. And I'm like, if I stay here another 5-10 years, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to be like them. I'm going to be unhappy. So it just clicked on me, like, this is not the right path. It's like what Jim Carrey said. If everyone got rich and famous, they would realize it's an illusion.
Yeah,
so,
he did say that, because he has a whole story about his own depression situation.
Yeah.
And so Robert, what are your thoughts and takes in terms of like 2030? What do you think?
I don't know, man. I don't know where things are going. I really don't have a pulse on where we're going. I totally agree that there's something brewing, and that we should be very wary, and we should move forward very cautiously, because
but how do you become cautious if you don't know what's going on?
No, I feel like our leaders need to be more cautious, because it's just like there's just so many pitfalls that we could get into, and it just and I think that they need to be more wary, but I also don't have any trust in them to do that. But I feel like we're gonna make it. It's just like how the road there is.
So for me, I think 2030, that it's going to be another set of group of people. I think it's going to be a younger group of leaders. I do have a little bit more faith
I
though,
hope so.
but just because I'm a natural optimist person though. But I think that in 10 years span, even 2024, to be honest, I still think that we're going to get a new group of turn of people with leaders just coming over, whether it's younger now in a sense, but it's just different faces, right?
We get Kanye this year.
Oh my God.
By the way, I think that's a whole scheme. Okay, I just think it's a whole scheme or something. But anyway,
I mean, that's how Trump started. I heard the way he started was he wanted leverage with NBC so he could bargain for The Apprentice for more money, and it turned out that he started winning. He started actually gaining in the polls, and he said, "Fuck it, why not? Let me just see if I can take this the whole way." I really believe he didn't think he was gonna win. I mean, if you saw him in the acceptance speech the night that he won,
he's surprised.
He came out. Dude, he looked guilty as fuck. He was like, "Wow, I actually won! Holy shit!" He was like, I guess that's what happened." Like,
yeah.
I mean,
that's what we're going for. We're going for like 2028. Like one of us is gonna be up there. We're starting a podcast. One of us will be up there. That's how it's good.
Might as well, man. I mean,
hey, I wasn't born in the States. I don't qualify for that. So
then it's just me. That's great. That's good for me.
But I guess that I think though we will expect better people, because we know what's bad, what's really worse, and we have to do better, and everyone knows that we have to do better. I think.
What does that mean? Like, who's actually doing better? Like, what actions are they taking?
So what I'm saying is that though, like in order
it's like a nice slogan. Yeah. Hey, we should do better.
We have to do better.
Let's all do better.
Hey, that's my campaign slogan. Okay, don't worry about it.
You can't even run, so you're done. You're done.
That's
We
okay.
already talked about this. You're done.
I could become a treasury or whatever.
Mayor or something.
There you go. But anyway, no. But seriously though, I do think that I do think that overall people seeing bad stuff already, where if kind of have a younger generation to realize, hey, we can move forward with this. We can definitely do a little bit better than we have today. So that's my optimistic side. I think it may take more than 4 years. It may take more than 8 years, but I think after 2030, I think that, in a sense, my biggest concern is that it's a path between now and then, right? But after 2030, I think that we will see the better things of the outcome. But between now and then,
It's gonna be a rough road.
It will be a rough road, just because one, the global economic scale situation, and then once everything go to crap, everybody's gonna look for blame for each other, and that's Brian, you might be right. It may be a war that may be starting because, okay, hey, China, it's your fault. You're the one that started this. Or China's going to blame on the United States. Hey, you're the one that had set up this capitalism bullshit crap. Everyone has to live by that. Screw the dollar being the reserve currency, So it's going to start playing games here and there. And it could be very slippery slope, like Robert said.
Yeah.
But if we have the right leaders of 2024 or 2028, we may be able to kind of squeeze by that and work something now, right? I don't think that conflict would be avoidable, like you mentioned earlier, but I think it could be minimized. It'll still be there. It will be minimized and it could be resolved differently.
Yeah, I don't get that intuition, but I hope that's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're very optimistic. The rest of us realists are gonna be on this side of the road.
Yeah, I mean, hey man, it's like that video I sent. Nature's evil. I mean, it has evil in it. It's not all evil, but there's still a lot of evil in human nature, and no one's talking about that. And it's just being allowed to fester and grow. So what's the natural consequence of that? It's going to be war.
But no one's talking about the good either, though, to be honest. I feel like, especially nowadays, what we see, what we hear in social media, or what we see, the news we see, no one's really talking about that. It's easier to capture the bad, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, even the good is still supporting the structures that are built on the bad. Yeah. So like, even the people that are saying, oh, we should all be better and do better, but they still go into a job and clock in, and they still pay taxes to a government that's mostly funding a military more than anything else.
Yeah.
So the systems that are in place are still being fed by human will and energy. This is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing like all the humans are feeding into these systems, even though they're saying these systems are evil, but they're still doing it because there's no other option to do it. Yeah. So what's the natural consequence? The system is going to get to a point where it has to culminate into this tension and blow up. And then when people see what it really is, then they have to.
Well, the system is already start showing some of the flaws, though.
Yeah. So, but it's got a long way.
Yeah.
Got a long way before it falls.
Flaws, but like, how are we going? Like, where is the change going to happen? Right.
That's true.
You can have cracks all over the walls, but until something changes, like nothing, like it's not gonna stop.
So okay, so
that's a good metaphor.
Yes, that's true though. I mean, and this leads us to the next segue in a sense. This free range venting. So this segue is kind of like we're gonna wrap this up in a sense that, hey, so what is your event for the week?
We're moving our venting ranting section to the end. We're calling it free range.
About anything.
It could be about anything. So so Brian, just think about what you're gonna say. For me, it was a realization that when we like all this like stimulus and stuff, like it's like really like for me it's just being middle class is like the worst. Like it just feels like you're just getting fucked all the time, right? So
yeah, I agree.
So you try lower class.
Like think it, like you think about it, like even when it comes to like something like the stimulus that we got, right? So there was a $1,200 stimulus plan that came out. Anyone who made over $100K didn't get it, right? And then, but when you look at the PPP loans that they came out with, there was no limit to that. So all of the people who were just making all this money can go and get a loan where a portion of that is just forgiven. Just
all of it's forgiven.
I don't think all of it. I think it's partially forgiven.
No. So after 6 months, if you keep your employees, all of it's forgiven.
I don't know. I've heard differently from people who actually have businesses and they've taken out these loans. So like the wording on it, I think when they take out the loans, it might be different for them.
So it's like a 1% interest rate. It's like almost.
Yeah. It's like a portion of it is forgiven and the rest of it is like a low interest rate, right? But but it's still like. You think of things like Kanye West, where his Yeezy brand made $1.2 billion last year or something, and then he took out a loan.
which is low, like comparatively to like what he made, isn't that big. But still, it's still in the millions, and it's still like he made $1 billion. Like, how can he not pay his people?
Yeah.
Like, it
Well,
just makes no sense.
Well, just corporation in general, right? I think there should have been more cap to that. There should be more regulation behind that.
There should definitely been a cap because we have a cap on if we can get $1,200.
Yeah.
They're getting millions of dollars, no cap.
Yeah.
Whatever. As long as you have under 500 employees, I don't care how much you make, we're gonna give you this
It should have been you know, companies under 500 people, and then your profit margin could have been whatever, taken away more than 5%.
Exactly. There should have been some sort of like amount where like if you make a certain amount, you shouldn't, like, if you're gonna do that for like the personal side, you should also do it for the business side.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's my rant. I'm just like livid about being middle class.
Hey, but are you excited? There could be a potential second.
The second was probably not going to affect me either. I'm probably going to get nothing out of everything.
You live in San Francisco, man. You make 100K. What do you expect?
No, I live in San Francisco. Make 100K. 100K in San Francisco, like, you're poor. Like, you're not living that well.
They don't even adjust to that. They don't even adjust to your.
They don't adjust it for like where you live or anything. They just, if I made 100K, if I like, what was the minimum? Like 70K is like
$90,000 to get something. $90,000.
No, but like to get like the full $1,200.
72K.
Right?
70. I think 70.
I think it was 70 something thousand. If I made 70,000 in Jacksonville, I'd be balling out. I live here for 100,000, nothing. Like I can't go. I like get scared to go down to Chipotle, right? Like it's a different like landscape in different cities. So like they should have done some sort of like cost of living adjustment on it. But I don't know. The government just doesn't seem to think about us.
All right.
Exactly.
So Bryan, go ahead. Go with your venting session.
My vent, man. I'm not like a venter. Like I don't usually vent, but I'll try.
Well, what do you see frustrated, and you like kind of like not makes you mad, but much just makes you just frustrated in the sense that okay, or maybe it could be a personal thing. Or self-realization. Oh wow, I've been stuck in this thing, but then I realized I should have done this in a sense, like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, man, honestly, the thing that frustrates me the most is that the majority of the world still buys into the fact that governments are out there to help people and protect the people. It's not true. It's 100% not true. They're there for control. Think about it. They are controlling a population that is working every single day of their life and paying taxes into a company that we call a government. And the majority of their profits off of the backs of the people are for the military, for expansion, for control, for domination, for force. So if there's one thing, I just wish people would look at history and read history from the people's side, like a people's history of the United States. Howard Zinn, read that book. It will show you the other side of history. It will show you that for the entire duration of America, since the birth of America, there has always been rebellion by the people in every single sector, literally in every single sector, for the entire history of the country, because the government does not care about people. They're meant to control the people. So when I hear people say, oh, the government should do this and that, it's like, no, you're still buying into the lie. You're still brainwashed. You still think they're out there for you when they're like, oh yeah, America. It's not America, man. America's not a thing. It's an idea, but it's not real. What America really is, it's a bunch of different cultures on one continent. I mean, there's an article out there, or like a research paper saying like America is made up of 11 different countries or something like that. There should be like 8 or 11 different countries. I can send it to you. You can link it if you want. But essentially, they've tricked everyone, and they continue tricking people because we buy into this thing called patriotism. And if you criticize it, you're labeled a fucking traitor, and they fucking take your head off. Like it's barbaric, man. It's crazy. So like the one thing I want is like read history, man. Like look at history. Look at actually what they do, not what they say, and make up your own mind. Like, are they actually looking out for you, or are they profiting off of you, off of your labor? Man, I realized this a while back, and I'm like, they're not going to take me. I'm not going to give my life energy to support this system, even if I have to be poor for a couple of years until I figure it out. So if there's any vent I have, it's that. It's like, don't buy into it, man. Don't buy into the flag. Don't buy into any of it. If you want to buy into something, look at what they do, not what they say, not what their like pep rallies are all about.
Well,
Like,
action means more than words.
What are they doing, man? They're giving tax cuts, tax breaks to billionaires, to corporations.
Yeah.
And they're sucking people dry, man. Like, it's happened so much, like, for the entire duration of the country. Just read history, man. Like, there's nothing glorious about it. It's fucking oppression. It's slavery. It's mental slavery. It's brainwash. So read that book. Read that book to start off with, people. That's a great book to start off. There's a lot of research in that book. There's research in that book that you won't see anywhere else, because the education we received is not education, it's brainwashing. The same thing. I mean, it's all meant for a purpose, man. And like, our world, our life is a bubble designed by people that have an agenda. That's the main thing. People, a lot of us are like good-hearted people, and because we're good-hearted, we say, oh, there's no evil people out there. People are good. Most people are good, but the people in power, a lot of the people in power, people in power are not good, man.
Yeah.
The people in power are fucking deranged, and they're drunk with power, and their ego is way out of control, and they can't even rein it in if they wanted to.
But overall, though, I mean, there's always going to be people in power, regardless, though. Do you think that's always going to happen, though?
But there's a difference between a person that rises to power from the community and a person that is put into power by a political party that pretends to give you options when there's really only two options. Yeah. And the two options only debate within a tiny spectrum of the actual issues, and they never touch the full width of what's happening. Yeah. This is the illusion of choice, man. Like, all the media companies are owned by 6 corporations.
That's true.
Both political parties have certain items that they do not touch, that they do not mention. Yep. We do not mention like decreasing the military, changing the corporate structure. Like, so it's a fucking illusion. And I just want people to wake up and say, like, what you're feeling in your heart, it's real intelligence. It's not just, oh, I kind of feel this way, but my head says something else. Like, no. Your heart is the real intelligence. Your heart should be leading you, and your mind should be the way that you follow the heart. Your mind is a way to follow the heart, but you shouldn't be following the mind, because the mind is very easily corrupted. And that's what's happened in the country and the world. And that's it, man. That's the vent.
All right. Yeah, we'll link that in the description.
It's a good vent, though. Okay, Bryan. So I cannot top that vent, but my vent's something much simpler than that.
That's good. Simple's good.
You know, but before we move on to my vent, I'll send you the article. That's what Ray Dalio mentioned about. Actually, he talked about exactly what you just mentioned, how the change of the world order that's happening, also why capitalism needs to be reformed. Even though he's a hedge fund guy, billionaire guy, listen, I'm not saying that he's the best guy out there, but I think from a billionaire standpoint to say this kind of stuff, I'm like, he's not gaining anything out of this. He's just not.
You're right. By the way, I love that he's speaking out. Like, that's what we need. We need people that are good at the game to say the game is rigged. That's exactly what we need. That's great.
So I'll link those articles to you so you can check them out. But so my vent is simple. It's nothing too like. It's more about me being mad at myself, because you know those moments, those blonde moments, or moments that you don't realize what you're doing is actually wrong, but and eventually it happens enough where, oh shit, that was wrong. I'm like, I got it. Okay. So
Robert, what did you do?
So Robert, you're gonna laugh at this. So play Monopoly Deal this weekend, and then Lake Tahoe.
Is your rant about Monopoly Deal?
Yes, it is.
For real, like a card game?
It is. Okay. It is.
It's very on track with capitalism, though.
Yeah.
Very on topic.
All right.
So my issue is that, so we're teaching one of my friends how to play the game eventually, and then he got good at learning the game really fast. So so every time I made the similar move where I let Josh take advantage of other people. So I hurt one person. So the game is about strategy. Think about it long term, and you always want to kind of, eventually prolong the game as much as possible. And so one of the biggest issue for me was to see that move, in a sense. Okay, So every time I hurt somebody, Josh took advantage of that and then hit him when winning the game. And this happened 3 times in a row for me to realize, I'm like, crap, why am I keeping allowing this happening? Whether, so for me, that self-realization of not expanding the game to drag it along as possible. I was thinking about too short-sighted of a move where I should have thought about, a couple of moves ahead of time. So for me, like, now I get it in a sense, like that blonde moment in a sense, like, oh my God. So now for every time that I try to play this game now, I look at things a little bit more differently, but not only the long term, but it's also the effects of each person move if I do certain things. It's like, so you're hoping at the end of the day for me now to expand the game, but not only to expand the game, but also how can I make sure every move that I make, the person next to me, after me, doesn't gain anything out of that. And so
you finally figure out the strategy of the game.
But not necessarily strategy of the game, but it's more about, it's like,
capitalism. Hurt the other one.
But it wasn't about just hurting everybody. At the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that, okay, how do I make sure that I don't hurt the person enough for other people to hurt them even more, to take advantage of that?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
I love that we're talking about a capitalism game.
I know, right?
Capitalism podcast.
I mean, man, if you just dissect what you just said, think about it. For me to move up,
exactly what we talk about the whole time.
I had to hurt the other person, and then this other guy hurt him more, and he won, and he beat me, and now I'm mad.
But I realized that I shouldn't be doing that, right? So for me now, I'm a better human being now. I'm not gonna do that anymore.
Yeah.
But
you're only gonna hurt people when it really benefits you. That's good.
But anyway, I thought it was kind of funny, because that's just why I kind of want to mention this event, because we were talking about capitalism the whole time. So it is kind of like ironic behind that. But anyway,
crazy, man.
No, but listen, Bryan, I appreciate you. Appreciate, you're an awesome person to be on to talk to, and I love you as a friend, man. And I would love to have you back.
I appreciate having you on. And your perspective.
Sure. And I'm not anybody, guys. I'm not anybody important. Nobody knows me. I'm just
none of us are.
None of us are. We're not experts. We're not experts. That's the beauty about this podcast, man. We can talk about this,
Cool.
And a part of this also, we'll probably listen to this again and probably fact check ourselves for certain things. We tend to post those links because we don't want to also provide false information as well. This is why we kind of use, use all the source links and stuff. But again, none of us are an expert, and that's the beauty about this, because we kind of help us express ourselves, because everybody lives a different page. Everyone lives their own little bubble. How can you learn from each other? Because ultimately, going back to your original concept about eventually community will need to learn from each community.
Yeah.
And because they're all going to be at different levels.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
So, but anyway, well, we appreciate everybody for tuning in.
Do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, I want to plug you guys. I think this is fucking great, man. Like, I think this is community right here. Like, this is how we evolve. We conversate, man. We discuss things at length without fear of being judged and criticized. And if you guys keep doing this podcast, in 2 years and 3 years, you're gonna have 1 million subscribers. You're gonna have people changing their mindset because of what you guys are speaking on, So even though it's like, oh, we're just in our rooms talking shit right now. No, this is evolution right here. This is how we evolve, by being uncomfortable and discussing things that are new. So just fucking keep doing it, man. It's great. I love it. Like, keep doing it, and
I appreciate that.
Come back whenever you guys want.
No, listen, we'd love to have you back for sure. Definitely other topics. I know you have a lot of other things in mind. Your mind is always thinking, because you have the time to think about that kind of stuff. So
I make the time, man.
That's true.
I take the time back, man. I'm like, I'm alive on Earth right now. I'm gonna live my life how I want to live it.
That's true. Yeah. Well, we appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in. Until next episode. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next time.
Nice.
Follow us on all our social media. GFO Thoughts on everything.
Everything.
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everything. All right. We'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Peace.